Welcome to Free Range. John Darash joined the Liberty Movement in 2000 and co-founded National Liberty Alliance in 2012 with Gerard Aprea. On November 10th, 2014, NLA sponsored We the People to form the United States Common Law Grand Jury for the purpose of saving America by returning justice and thereby the rule of law to our courts, which will permeate all three branches of government. Presently, NLA has almost 9,000 jurists from every state and have filed hundreds of papers in the federal courts providing subversion. Here is your host, Gail of Gaia, with her guests, John Darash and Gerard Aprea.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Gail of Gaia, and this is Free Range, where we talk about wild ideas and all kinds of things. So anyway, today I'm absolutely delighted to have two guests, very special guests with me, who are the founders of the National Liberty Alliance, John Darash and Gerard Aprea. Is that correct?
Yep, that's
okay,
close
good.
enough, yeah.
Okay, I was going to throw that over to you because I wasn't sure, but anyway.
No, that's good.
John has a new book out, and it's called Government by Consent, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about, plus we'll talk about the National Liberty Alliance and what it's all about, and how important it is for you to get involved and to know the things that you can find out at this website. I was told about it probably a while ago, and I didn't really look into it as much as I wish I had. But I have been looking at it closer now, and it is just a wealth of information for you. So, John, you say that your book is more than just a book. It's a plan, a roadmap from slavery to liberty. Would you like to expand on that some?
Well, absolutely. You know, God says that my people, they perish for lack of knowledge. And of course, he's talking primarily about lack of knowledge of him, but it also lack of knowledge of government by consent ultimately, because we are a Christian nation. The Declaration of Independence, which is our main founding document, it is the foundation of all of our documents and law. And it sets the stage, not only that all men are created equal and endowed by our Creator, but also the fact that we have the blessings of liberty. And there was a contract, or a covenant really, it was a covenant with God, that Declaration of Independence, to be under the laws of nature's God. And so in our Constitution it is written that the jurisdiction is law and equity. Equity identifies with legislative law, and there are 57 different U.S. codes on the federal level, of course. And each one of these are used to govern the different agencies within our government. The agency of the president itself, or Congress, or Senate, or the FBI, or all of the different departments. And so anyway, that is the law of the land. And people are not aware of the difference between equity and law. And back in 1934, and it actually goes all the way back, goes back to the beginning of the creation of this nation. We haven't totally won our liberty completely, because the enemy has gotten into our nation. They're weaved amongst us, and they control, at this point, a lot of the way our government goes. Of course, Trump is cutting that whole system off, taking out the deep state, which really are the minions of the New World Order, the controllers. And also the lawyers, the bar attorneys, are also minions of the New World Order. They're taught at the civil law, which is Babylonian law, and they no longer talk about equity in law. But in 1934, they passed what was called the Rules Enabling Act. And in 1938, the United States Supreme Court subverted our law and combined equity. They claim to have combined equity and law, which is an impossibility. It's oil and water to begin with. One's man's law, one's God's law. But they combined it together, and they call it civil law. And so you have civil rights, and civil law and civil rights is that which is given by legislation or by man. And we're now under civil law. We've been under civil law for quite some time. So when you have a political individual like a judge, who is a political individual, making a judgment on the people, that's a servant judging the master. There's something wrong with that whole picture. But people don't realize that. Common law is set up, and ultimately the main rule to common law is do no harm. If you harm someone, you've broke the law. And so that's how simple common law really is. And it's all about the facts. Did the person do it or didn't they? Who did it? What did they do? How serious was it? What was the injury? And it's a people's court. God says that he placed his law into the hearts of men. We know right from wrong. We can sit and listen to what's going on when you put 12 people together, watching and listening and trying to understand what happened, and then they come together and try to figure it out. They'll come up with a good conclusion, and they'll also come up with a proper penalty for that, which ultimately should be restitution, not necessarily jail. Jail is for infamous crimes, something when maybe, you shoot somebody, or murder, or something of that nature. But
can I interrupt? Can I jump in there a minute? When it comes to something like that, whether it's common law or not, isn't it a universal law that you have a right to defend yourself?
Well, of course you do, yes. And people should be defending themselves. To have a lawyer defend you is not wise, although some people may not be able to articulate themselves, and that's because lack of education.
Yes.
Anybody could be taught to articulate themselves. Anybody could be taught to think properly and to go deeply into things and to appreciate the facts, not just accepting them, but having the sources of the facts and realizing, you need to have those sources to show the truth. And law is all about self-evident truths, But anyway, I'm not sure, I forgot where I left off at, but generally speaking, though, they have taken our law and changed it. We're under Babylonian law, is where we're at. We're under the law of the state, controlled by the state. Nobody has the right or the authority to control the behavior of the people. The people have to control themselves, and if they break the law, common law will deal with them. There are certain laws that you break that God lays out. They're moral laws, and when you break them, God's going to deal with you. But God's going to deal with you with all the laws anyway. But in this world, we will be punished, or could be punished, for injuring another individual, and it's rightly so. Under common law, if you steal a man's ox, you have to replace 3 or 4. Well, that's how common law should go. And that's a sort of a principle, a maxim of common law. We find that in the Bible. So when people come to realize the difference between the law and that no other man can judge you, only your peers can judge you, and they take an oath to operate, take a vow ultimately, common law juries do. They take an oath to make decisions with a sense of honor, justice, and mercy, and all these things must be considered along the process. First, they have to see and believe that you're guilty or innocent. And if they believe you're guilty, and let me tell you, a jury most likely is going to find the truth. I think it'd be a very rare situation where 12 individuals, untainted, allowed to see and hear the whole story. It'd be very rare for them not to come up with a proper...
Not tainted is something that could be addressed, too, because from what I understand, sometimes the jury that are selected are not what anyone would call a jury of their peers. I mean, for example, if you're a juror on with somebody that's maybe of color or maybe of low income status, and you get a bunch of jurors that are, from the suburbs, how are they going to be able to relate?
Well, it's worse than that.
I was just going to say, it is worse than that, because now they've actually computerized it, and they run algorithms to the point where a federal prosecutor will put the algorithms in, and they will choose people that guarantee them the results that they want.
Thank you. I knew that. I didn't know exactly how that worked.
Well, that's what's going on today. But they've been subverting juries a long time. I'll let John finish. But one of the ways they subvert them is just with the instructions they give them, because they tell them, you can't rule on the law, and you can't vote your heart. You're going to do what I tell you to do. You're going to rule on the law as I give it to you. And a juror is supposed to also rule on the law. Is this a good law? Is it a bad law? Is it being misapplied? Is there extenuating circumstances? They don't want any of that. They want the IBM card with the holes in it. If it lines up, guilty. If not, innocent. You see, they don't want the jurors to vote their heart, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be looking at all the facts.
Yeah, and when we talk about these things, we're mostly talking about the federal courts, but it applies in all courts. But the federal court applies to all of us, so it's important to really take it from that position. But when you go into the state courts, they're doing the same thing. But the key thing is this: it's not so much that the U.S. attorney himself or herself is actually running these things through a computer, trying to figure out to get a good stacked jury that would rule in their favor. It's just part of the process, part of the system. When you go in to become a jurist, there's a questionnaire, and you can read both. There's a book of questionnaires for the grand juries, and there's questionnaires for the trial juries. We have both books, and we address this in the book. Matter of fact, probably pretty much everything we're going to be talking about today, we address these things in the book. And but they have these questionnaires, and they ask questions. They want to know whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. They may not ask that particular question straight out. But they'll ask you, for instance, do you own a gun? Did you ever own a gun? Does your spouse own a gun? Does your parents own a gun? Does your children own a gun?
What does that have to do with
friends
anything?
own a gun? All these things. Were you in the military? They'll ask you your question, what news do you watch? Do you watch Fox or NBC or CBS or one of these, a CNN or whatever? All of these questions are geared to understand the psyche of the individual so that they can pull the right people. And it's stacked. And Lysander Spooner, he wrote a book back in 1860s, and it was trial by jury. And he addresses this very thing and talked about this very thing, the same thing, that once the government can choose the jurist, then they can control the outcome of any case. And that's what they do. And it's very rare when you can get someone out of that system when everything is stacked against them. You have a judge already stacked against you. You have a jury stacked against you. And, of course, you have the prosecutor just stacked against you. And believe it or not, you even have the attorney that's representing you stacked against you. You've got to follow certain rules and laws and procedures of that court. And they're all designed to stifle the individual who's being tried. People need to wake up and realize how serious it is, because one day you're going to find yourself in court, whether it's a county court, a state court, or a federal court, or even a town court. And then you're going to be scratching your head how it is that you have to give up so much of your property because they fined you so much, or your liberty because they put you in jail, and you're not going to understand it. Well, they're going to come for everyone at some point in time if we don't change this. Yeah. Now, President Trump is doing a great job, and his key thing, of course, is taking out this deep state. And once that's done, we think, well, we're going to have liberty and we're going to have happiness and we're going to have all these good things. And that may be true for a while, but not in the courts, because there will be a power vacuum within the political and the judicial processes. And if we, the people, don't step up to take control of those particular positions, which is where we have consent of government and we control whether we consent to government here or not. If we don't take those positions as committeemen, as jurists, as administrators of the jury, so that we, the people, decide and pull together the jury and orientate them, if we don't take care of that, we're only going to be back here again. And it'll only take a couple of more presidencies or maybe a generation, and we'll be right back where we started from.
Well, that's not... That's not a good thing.
Nope, that's the big problem. People look at anybody who doesn't understand the court system and how it works, anybody who doesn't understand the principles of common law and the principles of equity and lives a life has no control over their life. They have no control over their liberty, and they're in jeopardy. We need to teach our children in school these things. We need to teach them not what to think, but how to think. We need to introduce them to their heritage, going through looking at our founding fathers and where natural law comes from. And if we don't do these things, then we have to do this for ourselves, because we were never educated properly. Jefferson
No, we certainly weren't.
Proper education.
You certainly weren't.
And I was going to say, and that's 99.9% of the people that are in the courts don't understand this stuff, that are running us, that are running that system. And every generation we get further and further away from that.
And you know, the low income people just get railroaded. I mean, look what they did to the president, to General Flynn, to Roger Stone, people like that who already have position and already have, you know, probably a sizable income, okay? And they were treated unfairly. How do you think how easy it is for them to mistreat lower income people or people that are stuck with I call them public pretenders, and I know that just having an attorney means that you're, you know, a mindless.
Well, again, if they went to school and they went through 12 years of school or even 8 years of school, you don't even need 12. We can accomplish what's accomplished in our college levels in 8 years, definitely within 12 years. Okay, but if they went to school and if they were taught properly, which I'm not aware of any school that is teaching properly, unfortunately. But if they
you got
taught
homeschools,
properly,
there's people doing homeschooling.
well, yes, but even there, they're not fitted with the proper education necessary. For instance, they don't know about consent of government. I homeschooled my children. Excuse me. I homeschooled my children, and you know, they talked about different things in the founding fathers in the education, but they really didn't get deep into it. The civics, they didn't get into the heritage, they didn't get into the common law, the liberty, and you know, liberty in itself. And you know, this is very important for people to understand. If you want to put liberty into a nutshell, what is liberty? Okay, what is the true liberty we're talking about? Liberty is the liberty or the freedom from all legislative laws. That's what liberty is, and that's hard for people to digest. Okay, first thing you hear is, well, you know, we got to obey traffic lights, and well, of course we got to obey traffic lights. That makes sense when it's there. Nobody's going to speed through a traffic light. And if your things are set up, we have a video online up on our page. It's called the Road to, what's the name of that? Road to Nowhere or something? Where they took all the traffic lights down.
Yeah, I forget now.
Yeah. Anyway, they took all the traffic lights down, and the people were appalled by that. They said, no, you can't do that. And they said, well, we're performing an experiment here.
It was in England someplace.
Yeah. And they put up yield signs or stop signs, and the people, once they did this for a couple of months or whatever it was, and they discovered there was less people injured along those roads, less people hit by a car. And when they tried to take it down, and less traffic jams, and when they tried to go back to the original state, the people said, no, don't take it away. I can get from this side of town to the other side of town. Used to take me 20 minutes. I do it in 10 minutes now. Why? Because people aren't driving looking at a light. They're looking at the road. They're looking at the pedestrians. They're looking to yield, and everybody's yielding to each other, and the pedestrians are crossing, things are moving, and there's no traffic jams, and things are going along. So generally speaking, even with today's traffic and the fact that we have vehicles, there's no need for any kind of a situation that we have. It's only a place where Rico on steroids making money off the people.
Yes,
but going back to liberty, okay, just look at the Constitution. What is it? I mean, just look at the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights ultimately was written, if you look at the preamble, and let me read the preamble, it says the conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adoption the Constitution, expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. And as extending the grounds of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. So now when we look at these Bill of Rights, all law, whether it's legislative law or how we interpret the Constitution, must be read in light of the Bill of Rights and and in light of the foundation, which is the law of God. Now, when you look at the Bill of Rights, it's everything about protecting you from the government. Congress shall make no law.
And they do it all the time.
You can't take no freedom of exercise of speech, of the press, the right to assemble, the right to redress our government. The Second Amendment, the right to defend ourselves, the necessity for a security of a free state to keep and bear arms. It talks about our right not to have excessive bail. It gets into all of the powers, the right of due process, the right of, if they want to take something away from you, they have to have a sworn affidavit, and they have to have it signed by a judge. And then only then can it be applied, and that's part of due process. And then you have to be tried in a court of law, not a court of civil law. And this is what we talk about here at National Liberty Alliance. This is what the book addresses, and this is what the people need to understand. The education you never got, the education that'll truly free you and give you true liberty to yourself and your posterity.
Wow, and we were really far away from that right now.
Oh, way, way far away.
You know, I've seen enough, and you know, I have a family member, and the justice system really is bad, very bad. There's no justice, and then you'll have people that'll say, "Well, just obey the law," you know, kind of things like that, and it has nothing to do with what's being done in the courts. As far as like codes and statutes and things like that, regulations. Yep. Where do you see that going in the future as assuming common law?
Even the United States Supreme Court early on has ruled on this numerous times, saying this is not for the people. This is for people who are in office, elected people. It's for bureaucrats. It's those people who are working in the government. And we have to restrain them and restrict them because they're empowered. We give them special powers. And when you read through the Constitution, each one of these articles gives so much power to our government. Article 1 gives power to the legislators in the Senate. Article 2 gives power to the administration, and Article 3 gives power to the courts. Okay, and then you have all these agencies that has to be governed. So you know, as a businessman myself, I was a construction manager, and I had my own business as a general contractor, and I've ran numerous jobs which had to be controlled, and we had policies and procedures, and you had to operate with the policies. And when you broke the policies and procedures, you know, you keep breaking them, you're going to get fired. There's a way to do this and a way to do that, a way to address people, all of these things. Well, it's the same thing. When you empower people, as we do in the government is power. It's a fire, and it needs to be controlled. And if we don't control it and tie it down by the chains of the Constitution, it's going to burn us. And that's what all these codes are for. If you go into these codes and start reading through them, they all have its own purpose, and again, for different agencies. For instance, Title I deals with the general provisions, okay, which just covers everybody, you know, that's working for government. Title II covers and guides the process, procedures, and the statutes that control Congress, okay. 3 controls the president. You got 7 controls agriculture. It controls the agriculture of our nation to make sure things are pure and safe and so on. Any commercial activity, we've given them the power and the authority to control those activities and make sure things are done properly and controlled properly. Education is under Title 20. The Navy is under 34. Under 42, it's the public welfare. Under 52, it's voting in the elections. Under 56, it's the wildlife. And so all of these different titles have a purpose, and each one is its own jurisdiction. So I've heard it said when I first started to look and try to understand how the system works, and I had to figure it out all myself. It's been the school of hard knocks, going into courts, trying to figure this out, getting thrown out because I didn't understand that rule, and understanding the purpose of rules and why they have these rules, and the rules don't even apply.
Yeah, they do all sorts of things that are totally illegal as far as I'm concerned, and they get away with it.
I was told that when you go into a federal court, jurisdictions change with the conversation. And I didn't understand that at first. I understand that now. Because each one of these titles is a jurisdiction. And once they move into a jurisdiction that doesn't apply to you, you have to object to it. Okay, generally speaking, if you're working for the government, you don't want any kind of a jurisdiction that's applied in maybe the commercial activities or anything outside of that. Whatever the title is that controls that particular agency. But as for the people, we operate under the rules of common law, which to put it, rules of common law is ultimately common sense. These are truths that cannot be denied. They're called maxims. For instance, if I make the statement, water does not flow uphill, okay? Well, who could argue with that? That's a maxim, ultimately, okay? If I say a thing similar is not necessarily the same thing, okay? That's true. It's a maxim. It's obvious. If you try to use a case and the conclusion of that case on this case because it was similar to this case, well, the thing similar is not necessarily the same thing. A person is innocent until proven guilty. That's a common law maxim. For every injury, there must be a remedy. Who can argue with these conclusions? There are thousands of them, and there are many to be discovered. And as a courtroom moves through, if you're a good lawyer and you're really paying attention, and you're trying to, for instance, be the represent the individual that's being accused of something, and you watch and you go through the courts, and you start to line up all the maxims that surface, okay, the truths that surface as the court goes through, and keeping notes of that. When you come to give your final, I don't forget what they call that, but your final speech or summary of the case, okay, you would tie together all of those truths and lay out the position, or again, you've got to start off, look at, my client is innocent until proven guilty. And the court hasn't done that. And then you go through all of these different things. Of course, the other side will do the same thing from the other way. But really, a court case is really all about the facts. All the stuff that they pull in, the civil law stuff and all the rules and all these things is to muddy the waters, to position the court, to get things done the way they want it to be done, and to take forever. We have a case in the United States, in the federal district court here in the Southern District against YouTube. It's an open and shut case. One day, could be tried in one day and over with, done with. I mean, they're going to try to drag this thing into eternity, and they do. 5 years later, you still might not even be before the courts the way they move. But our argument in the court will be against the rules. Every time we walk into a court, before we can deal with the case, we have to deal with the judge. And it seems you spend time after time going after trying to stop the judge from destroying your case or affecting your case or having your case thrown out. It's a major problem. These judges, they maintain the status quo, the powers that be. And the attorneys have all been trained. They are the minions of the New World Order. They have all been trained for the same thing. There is no common law. It's been abrogated. Well, how could it possibly have been abrogated? Who did that? If we, the people, ordained and established, who abrogated it? Certainly
the bar attorneys did.
Yeah, well, there you go. There's no power authority. Who gave them the power authority to do that?
It's called the bar mafia.
Well, it was actually done by Rule 2 under the Rules Enabling Act. That's where it was done.
That's actually
we lay that out.
That's a treasonous statement, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, that's all common law document. And our forefathers have said, I think it was Jefferson said, without an understanding of common law, you can't understand these documents, the Constitution and the Declaration. It is a common law document. And I think, and Madison said, unless we're a moral and religious people, you won't also be able to operate under this compact. So these are things
that said that. A judge early on, it could be Jay, I forget. It wasn't the founding fathers, but they, of course, would have agreed with it. And all of their.
I thought Madison said something like that. But anyway.
No, I'm talking about the one that the first point you made, which has already slipped my mind.
Yeah, it's trouble when you get old like this.
Oh, it's not just me, huh?
Because it slipped my mind and I just said it. No.
It's in the water and the air, I think.
Yeah. It's the fluoride. That's why you don't want to drink that stuff.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, there's a big case going on right now that they're not talking about. They finally got it into the courts. This fluoride business.
Get it out of the water. Why are they poisoning our water still?
It's bad for the fetus. Gets it. It's as poisonous as mercury and lead.
Yep.
If not more poisonous.
They're putting it in our water.
Well, because it keeps us docile, you know what I mean? It's like
exactly.
That's why you can't look at. They wanted to have black and whites fighting each other. Well, guess what? They forgot. We're docile, but that doesn't usually happen. They got to bust them in. They got to bring amphibians in from these other countries, because blacks and whites. Listen, all that hostility has been gone years ago. You know, I mean, you talk to them. You got blacks marrying whites and whites marrying blacks, and white parents letting their kids marry black children. There's no more. There's very, very little bit of that going on right now. It's really, we really have been a melting pot, but they want to make it. You know,
they want to stir that pot.
That's right. They need that controversy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame.
It is.
So,
pretty disgusting. One of the things that I thought of from a constitutional standpoint and our representatives, I thought it was rather very upsetting that Congress took a big vacation when the country is in crisis and there are people that were facing evictions and no income to speak of through no fault of their own, and they all decide to just take off, and they don't pass the stimulus bill, they don't pass anything. I know the president took care of business, but the fact that they did that, in my estimation, is a gross violation of their duty.
Well, absolutely. They violated the very premise of our Constitution. If you look into the preamble of the Constitution, which I'd like to just read very quickly, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, that's number one, the purpose of the Constitution, to form a more perfect union. Before that, they were a loose union. Establish justice, which is what we're talking about. Ensure domestic tranquility, which certainly Congress did not do in what you're talking about when they just kind of disappeared and went on vacation.
Yeah.
Provide for the common defense, which they didn't do for that, and the president rebuilt the military. To promote the general welfare, again, they've assaulted that, and secure the blessings of liberty. Instead of securing the blessings of liberty, they have assaulted the blessings of liberty. When an individual becomes elected and they take a position in government, and they raise their hand to swear to defend and uphold the Constitution, and then they go and assault the Bill of Rights by trying to pass gun control, that is treason, and these people need to be removed. But we are so far removed from common sense, so far removed from the truth, that which is obvious. They have confused us so bad with their entertainment and their Marxist schooling and their Marxist media. They're just, constantly being bombarded with all of these things. We get confused and we don't even know the difference of what's right and what's wrong at sometimes. And that's how serious it is. If people cannot recognize subversion, when these people bring up Marxism and constitutional republic, a lawful constitutional republic, and we are the only lawful constitutional republic, by the way, the United States of America. But what a lawful constitutional republic is like oil and water when you try to mix it with Marxism. It's the exact opposite. Liberty is all about property. It begins with your body and your land and anything extended from that. That's yours. That's your liberty. You have ownership of it. Okay, Marxism, communism, all the isms, okay, they're opposite of that. You don't have the right of property, the right of land. You don't have the right of even the property of your own body. They give you the civil rights that they think they want to give, and they'll give them to when they want. They may give it to you and not to the other person. You see, it's the exact opposite. That's an assault upon we the people. It's an assault upon the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and it needs to be addressed. And as a matter of fact, we are addressing that right now with in the courts with the United States Supreme Court.
Thank goodness for that.
Based on the caliber of those people, being that many of them are actually avowed Marxists, we're better off they went on vacation because the president took care of it, and those guys, forget about it. If they're there, they make it worse.
Well, this is true. I think they all should be fired myself.
Well, look, they all got to go away anyway, because if you hold them to the Constitution, and we've discovered some teeth in the Constitution that says that anytime any of a elected official that has an oath subverts the Constitution, he makes himself ineligible to hold that office. Now, you don't need to run a trial, and you don't need to prosecute him. He just becomes ineligible. All you got to do is prove that he said such and such, or voted for such and such, or did such and such, and guess what? He's out. And that's something we're going to be working on with NLA, of getting him out based on...
That sounds like just about every single one of them needs to go.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, and that's
the list
what
is
John's
long.
talking
We
about.
have listed them.
There's going to be a vacuum in there, and that's scary. Because it's one thing to
the
throw them out, but
vacuum,
then what are you going to get back in there?
You see, but the true vacuum is the vacuum where the political process and the judicial process, where the people must take control. For instance, right now, in the courts, the judge controls everything that goes on inside the court. The prosecutor controls everything that goes on with the jury and also even with the grand jury. They have total control over that. And of course, they're not going to keep in mind the rights of the individual. They're there to win a case because there's money to. Our court system is RICO on steroids. People need to realize that. We are probably the most corrupt judicial system in the whole world, maybe. I mean, you go down to South America and other places, I'm sure you find a lot of bad things, but ours is just as bad and maybe even worse because there's more money to be made. But these people, they rule all the system in the courts, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. In common law, a prosecutor is not to address the grand jury. There's only two people, actually three people, that can address the grand jury. Number one, and the major one who usually does, is the sheriff. They're the ones to address the grand jury. If someone has a crime that they want, you go and you make an affidavit, you bring it to the sheriff, or you bring it to the police department who brings it to the sheriff. Okay, if it's a federal thing, no matter what, if it's against the people in that county, you got to go to the sheriff. Okay, now the sheriff then looks at it and makes a decision on whether there's enough evidence to take it to the grand jury, or maybe there's some evidence in here that makes the person not guilty because they have to give everything up. And so that's the one person that needs to go. Also, the coroner. You know, when you have a person who has been killed, the first person on the scene, of course, there's been, with a homicide of one, whether it's a murder or just accident or whatever, but it's a homicide, it's the coroner that comes in. And when he decides that there's murder, he has the power and the authority to go to the grand jury directly, or he can go through the sheriff. And the third person who can go to the grand jury, because we have a right to do this, are the people. If you feel that you really want to go talk to the grand jury, you're not sufficient to talk to the sheriff. It's not sufficient to talk to the administration that assists the jury, and you want to talk to the jury, then the person needs that ability to go and make that address to them, and that's it. So we, the people, and the administration for the grand juries right now, that is the group of people that decide. First of all, they call the grand jury together.
They stack those juries too.
They work through the stacking, correct? All that's done in the court system. It's all automated to some degree. Secretaries making the phone calls or sending out the letters or whatever. And then everything comes in, the questionnaires, it's all fed in. All that's taken care of by the courts. No, we the people. And that's one of the things we are doing, and that's one of the first things we started back in 2012 when we established National Liberty Alliance, was to build administrations for the juries, whether it's for the grand jury or the trial jury. And we're looking for 4 people as the paid position, by the way. Anybody who wants a job, come get educated, and we need people all over the United States. 4 people in every county, and some counties, like you go down to New York City, there are 5 boroughs, which are counties, and they're very big. They're going to need a lot more than 4. But generally, most counties only need 4. And that comes from Magna Carta. Huh?
Who pays those positions?
Well, the same people who've been paying the positions for them to do it, the government. They have to supply this, but they have to be non-political. They have to be separated from the government. It's just we, the people who are paid to do a job, and we take an oath, a sense of honor, justice, and mercy, and the people who come as jurists, they take the same oath. So we need to take the money away from them and give it to the individuals that are going to do this, and then we have to self-police ourselves. We've even written a process on how to do this. And if you want to get into that kind of a discussion, we can. But we have a process so we can prevent people from abusing that power and authority, because people will abuse power and authority.
Yes,
we have to self-police ourselves. And we have to then take and orientate the jury to make sure that they have a basic knowledge of what's going on and what their authority is, how powerful their authority is. They need to understand the basic ideas of what a maxim is. And, you get 6 to 8 hours to address the jury, to prepare them for the job ahead of them, whether it is a grand jury or a trial jury. And so people need to do this. It's a professional position. We are training people right now to take these positions. We're writing the handbook to lead people through the process, just like any other job. You have, rules and regulations. So we'll be writing a handbook and make a uniform thing across the whole nation. And the handbook itself will be self-evident truth. It'll be just nothing but self-evident truth. You're not going to be able to disagree with the things. You go read the handbooks they got right now. You go read the ones that they pass out, and you're going to be aghast. You're going to be appalled. You're going to say, whoa, that doesn't make sense. That's, it's self-evident that it's a lie, you see.
Well, I know.
Self-evident truth is very simple. Maxims are very clear and simple, and anybody who has any common sense at all will recognize them immediately.
No, it's
That's the rules of the common law.
Okay, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but currently the way grand juries are set up right now, it's entirely run by the prosecutor. And
Some
he
places,
can
yes.
bald-faced lie about things, because I know of a case like that. Okay?
Yeah, in some places there's more control than others, but generally speaking, yes, they can get their ham sandwich prosecuted, get an indictment for their ham sandwich, and that's we should be upset by that statement. That's an insult to we the people. That's an insult to our justice system that they can get a ham sandwich indicted, and so. Yes, a prosecutor will come in, and some of them maybe have a lot of charisma. They'll dazzle the people, and they'll convince them of everything, and they'll be going right along with it. And again, remember, there's a psychological makeup there. Someone like me is going to upset the whole cart, So that's the problem. They don't want someone like me.
But that's what we need.
Absolutely.
More people like you.
We need people who are informed. It wasn't long ago I was ignorant to this stuff. I came into the liberty movement back in 2000. I joined up with We the People, and it became real strong and powerful back at around 2007, 2008 with the Ron Paul movement, and then the Tea Party movement. And so all that has been an education for me over the years. And when we started to go into the courts, we started a committeeman thing, which is taking control of the political process. Again, consent of government. There's two power structures to take control of government. There's the political and judicial. The people must control not 99%, not 99.99%, but 100% of both of those processes, without no interference from government. And if we don't control those two things, then we do not have government by consent. But anyway, it was about 2008 under 2009, 2010, a guy named Lenny Roberta we met up in Albany, and he was teaching about the committeeman process, and I had never heard of it before. And I found it very intriguing. We made contact with him. We went to his instructional schooling, and we learned how this goes. He had like he'd give a day-long tutorage on the committeeman and the process. And so we learned that, and we took it out, and we started teaching people, and we started to go in to take control of the political process and found that we couldn't. So we decided, we got to go to court. And that's where our education began. What was that, probably around 2011 or 2012 when we started to look into the court system, Gerard? I think it was around that. And it was the end of 2012 when we were New York committeemen. And then we changed ourselves to New York Liberty Alliance. And then we had so many people coming to our meetings from so many states and so many places, and we told them, well, copy our website, mimic what we're doing. We realized they couldn't really compile everything that we had, and so we decided to go national, and we came up with, by the end of 2012, we became National Liberty Alliance. And what motivated us through this process and where we're at right now in the courts ultimately was a court case called the United States versus Williams, U.S. versus Williams. And it was Anton Scalia who wrote the paper for the popular decision of that case. And in there, they just laid out, he went back into history. I mean, it was page after page, paragraph after paragraph, line after line, all the way through, just empowering the people is separated from government. It's the people that have to control this thing. It's the people that pull themselves together, going back into the Magna Carta. But anyway, his papers were so powerful that he wrote. It empowered us, and we started digging deep, and then that is really, and we were in the courts already trying to battle things that we didn't understand. And but now we know how they're doing it and what they've done, and we know how to go up against them and intimidate them in the courts. Now, we don't necessarily get our will all the time, but of course, more we don't than we do. But we do intimidate them now.
Yeah, because they're very intimidating. At least that's been my experience. I guess the better you know the material, the
man behind the curtain. Once the curtain is pulled, they're no longer intimidating. But it is true they can put you in jail. But you know what? we found one thing out, especially on the federal level. They do nothing without finding a place to hang their hat. And if you keep pulling the nails out of the wall and that hat falls to the floor and they have no place to hang it, to some degree you'll get your way, or at least to get thrown out of the court if it's a criminal thing coming against you. We won an IRS case similar in that way. And few people win IRS cases. We got an apology letter from the IRS. That's how powerful our case was. And it was really very simple. We had hit upon very simple, truths and the way things work and what's really going on there. The IRS, gave us a release of lien. Who have you ever heard where the IRS releases a lien? Okay. So,
of course, the stars have to line up and everything for that. I was going to say in the beginning, I started to say, is we've been, especially in the beginning, we were very persnickety in the court, as far as putting them in their place. Of course, we were a little more ignorant than we are today, but we didn't even realize that because we stick with common law and we don't let their statutes claim us. They got very little they can do against us as long as we're standing under the veil of common law. They don't have control over us really, and we don't really enter into their jurisdiction. See, they got to get the jurisdiction over you in order to punish you.
How do you prevent that?
Well, it's all in the way that you present the case. You lay it out in the beginning. That's what John says every time we go in. The beginning fight is that, we're under the rules of common law. We're not under your statutory rules.
If anybody wants to learn this on this particular, by example, we have a case coming up in the Southern District of New York. So anybody that can travel there, it's not too far away. We will be letting our members, we have almost 9,000, we're coming up on 9,000 members with National Liberty Alliance right now, and we're looking for that tipping point where we hit that critical mass, and we're hoping between the book and the campaign we're doing for sheriffs that we're going to hit that tipping point. But anybody that's listening in here, and if you're in the New York area, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania close enough, or just close enough and you want to make the trip down, to the court case when we have the hearing, because we don't want a hearing, because in common law we don't need a hearing, and hearing is not part of the process. The paperwork goes through, and the only hearing you might have is to maybe work out details of the court case and how it would go forward, but I can't think of much that you'd really have to discuss there. But they have these court hearings for the sole purpose of taking control of you, placing you under rules, taking jurisdiction over your body, and making sure that they control the outcome, and if they can, to throw you out by Rule 12, which is, again, a discussion on its own, or Rule 4, or 2, I think it is, which, again, brings you under the civil law. But that's the first order of business they do, so we know what that's all about, and we're going to challenge all that. We're going to challenge the jurisdiction. And in a common law court, we opened a common law court. It's called a court of record. And the federal judges understand it. They know what that means. State judges, I haven't found one that does understand that. But as far as the federal courts, they understand that they're much more highly educated to go through the process. After all, they study all these different titles. These judges have to be familiar with all these titles in court cases that control a lot of these titles too, because therein is part of their process in the court cases that are before them. But in any event, when you go into the court, that's the first thing you have to battle is the jurisdiction, and the question to the court is the jurisdiction and understanding that jurisdiction. Status. And when they go with their double talk and move in a different direction, and we challenge it, and then we may get to the point where we'll tell the judge, you're going to have to recuse yourself for whatever the reason may be. But again, it's a jurisdictional reason. We have the power and the authority. You see, in a common law court is the highest court in the land. It's above the United States Supreme Court. Even the United States Supreme Court cannot second guess the decisions made in a court of record. That's the court of the people, where 12 people make the decision, and that's it. That's why when you appeal a murder case or something of that nature, or anything, you appeal any case, it's very rarely gets overturned, because you can't really, no court can overturn a decision of a common law court. Now, they can only get involved if someone's unalienable rights was injured in that case, and only in that situation, however narrow that might be within that case. But getting back to what we're talking about here is trying to take control of the court. We don't go to an appellate court, because there is no appellate court above us. We are the highest court. So we get to sue directly the judge, and that's common law. So we add his name onto the paperwork and file papers and an affidavit against that judge and sue that judge right there in the court.
You can do that?
Absolutely, that's common law.
Wow. Okay.
Nobody knows about this. Very few people. I'm sure people know about it. I haven't met them yet, but I'm sure there are people out there that know these things.
Mm-hmm. But getting them done, or that's another. Knowing it and being able to implement it are two different things.
Well, that takes experience, hard knocks. You have to go through the intimidation process because you're going to be intimidated in the beginning. You got, what do they call it? When you go out to sea and you have they're not sailors' legs, but, because the boat's moving around. You got to get used to all these things, and it takes time. It is very intimidating going into a court. But I think we're at a point where we can take a good control over whatever's going on in the court. Not that we're going to necessarily win ultimately, but they're not going to win either. And when it comes down to it, they do have what I call the fixer. Okay, there's a judge willing to throw himself under the bus for the whole process, and I'm sure he's paid well. And so when the fixer comes in, you're going to lose, but then you're going to sue him also.
So,
but again, getting justice is so difficult.
So he who laughs last best is basically what you're saying.
They're bound by an oath, correct? An oath to the Constitution, aren't they?
Well, absolutely.
Here's my question.
Intimidate some. Okay, when you go into the court, well, the last time we went into the federal court, we went into the Southern District, Gerard and I and a few other people, and we didn't really run it properly. We really were kind of still a little, we got a lot of papers going through the courts, but we need to go. We're going to go down and make our arguments now. But this last time we had went into the court, there was a few things we discovered, and it was an IRS case. And the judge said that they were going to make a decision within a couple of weeks. And he gave me some time to write a paper, and I told him I wanted to address something. I forget exactly what it was, but I wanted to address something, and I wrote. He said, "Take your time." No, I'll have it in a couple of days. It turns out in their rules, if you don't object to certain things, this is inside their rules. If you don't object to certain things in a certain amount of time, you can't object at all. And they were trying to push us past that point of objection. We didn't know that at the time, but we found that out as we were going through this process. But anyway, we responded very quickly. And we went after the IRS from the position that, first of all, they didn't have any fiduciary authority over anything that I owned or controlled. That's mine, for instance, a bank account. They have no authority to go into my bank account without my permission. They have to go get a warrant, and it has to be a lawful warrant. It has to be a sworn affidavit and all the other things. And it's called fiduciary authority, ultimately, to go in and take control and to seize my bank accounts without any kind of due process. The other thing is a proof of claim. And so when a person gets a letter saying that they're going to lien them, and then they give a lien and they lien, you put a lien on in the county, there's no lien in the county. You get what's called a notice of lien, and the county gets what's called a notice of lien. And then they exercise that as a real lien. The sheriff doesn't know the difference between it because he's not educated. They're in the need to educate our sheriffs. They will go exercise that warrant to take that property on what's called a notice of lien. It's only a notice of lien, everybody keeps saying. Where is the lien? But no one really asks the question in the court. No one knows exactly what's going on. And we fell upon this accidentally. And we discovered that they have to have a certain form. There's two forms. It's called Form 56 and Form 4490. And if you Google those two forms, they're IRS forms, they'll come up. One is fiduciary authority, and the other one is proof of claim. And those are affidavit forms. And one of these agents that are trying to come out after you, they have to sign that under penalty of perjury. They have to swear to what they're saying. So when they say, for instance, you owe us $300,000, when you don't owe them a penny, or maybe you do owe them $1,000 according to the way they go, but they go, if they see that $300,000 went through your bank account, that's your tax. That's what they say. Well, they have to swear to that now, and they don't. So in order to get a lien, they have to file the lien in the federal district, in the courthouse in the federal district that you live in. And then they take the paper and they file in the county a notice of lien, okay, and not the lien itself. It doesn't exist. It's make-believe. It's fantasy world. And therefore, it doesn't exist. We challenged that. We hit upon that point And I think that was the key thing that got us out of that court, that whole system with this thing. And we got the apology letter. We got the release of lien. And the judge who said he was going to make decisions, and this happened after my last paper went in, judge never said a word, never made a decision. 8 months later, the court just disappeared. Nothing happened, but we did get the letters from the IRS, and we should have pursued it further. We should have went after our wherefore clause, which is going after them for many, many thousands of dollars. And but we didn't. I kind of felt that, well, I don't want to stick the stick back into the hornet's nest, but I should have pushed it forward. I really should have, because they do it over and over and over again. They don't stop. They never learn.
Don't worry, you'll get your chance.
Yeah,
They're not done yet.
Well, I was told by one of my guests that they're expecting, they're saying the whole judicial system will go into the spin cycle come fall, and I kind of hope that's true.
What does that mean, spin system?
Everything's going to change.
It's going to turn them upside down.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to. You know what? It's got to. And you know what? President
They're all
Trump.
treasonous.
President Trump met up with people from National Liberty Alliance out in Oregon during the Bundy crisis, and the Hammonds. Yeah, and he sent out representatives. He was campaigning at the time; he wasn't president yet. And representatives that went out to Oregon because he was interested in what was happening out there, and he knew what was going on with Hillary Clinton and the deal with the land and how they were trying to steal the land from the ranches and everyone else in order to get.
He actually knew more than we did, because we didn't realize that was all about Uranium One. We just came to their aid because of the facts of the case, but it turned out it was a lot deeper than we thought it was.
Yeah, and Gerard and another one of our members went out there also. But anyway, our members met up with his people, and they took copies of our paperwork that we had filed in various places, and then we got word back from the president back to those people, to our people, is that the president, well, he wasn't a president then at that point, but they were interested in our paperwork. So everything we've done from that point forth goes back to 2016. We have also copied both the Attorney General and the President, President Trump. And
awesome.
We've been giving him a lot of stuff, and we have been digging real deep into it. And
that's encouraging. That is
as
so
I listen
encouraging
to the president talk and everything, and I'm sure he's educating himself. He's got a lot of people around him, but a lot of them are bar attorneys. But I think they're coming to the right thinking also. I start to see little things that I'm wondering how he got to that. It's in our paper, and he's we're hoping that he got it from us. Okay, he's paying attention to us and seeing what we're doing and realize this is the way the court system has got to go. You cannot have a court of law without the people having total, not 99%, again, 100% control. They must have the control.
Right now, we don't have any control.
No, nothing. And no political control. Look at,
none.
Again, one of the things, we teach numerous things. We're trying to empower the people. We're rebuilding a connection between the people on the grassroots level and the sheriff. Okay? We're rebuilding and reconstructing the militia from the ground up. We're reconstructing the committeeman process. There's not one elected committeeman that we have found, anyway, in America that's been elected. So they're controlled by people who aren't even elected. So we have to become the elected committeeman, which is a very simple job. It's about 40 hours a year, if that, in probably the most populated areas, but it's less than 40 hours a year, and it's around election time, and it's a great job because you get to interview the people who are going to go into the tickets. You get to decide yes or no. We're going to put you on a ticket. We're not going to put you on a ticket. So they have stolen that. And they have taken so much control that our only decision is the criminal on the right or the criminal on the left. There is nothing good going. There are no states. Okay,
a choice between the lesser evil, right?
So once in a while, a Ron Paul gets in, or a Trump. But look we have to take that back. Okay, the committeeman process is so powerful. That when these people break their oath, when these people are not doing the right thing and Congress refuses to deal with the problem, okay, because they can impeach, and if they refuse to deal with that problem, it's a very simple thing. First of all, if the county chair were to call one of the representatives up and say, hey, we got a problem with you. I understand you're in town. I want to have lunch with you. I want to meet you here at whatever place. They say, yes, sir. They're going to meet him because he can't get back onto the ticket without going through that person, without going through that group of people that control his job ultimately. So you get him to coffee and say, hey, look, this is what you're doing, and you're not obeying the Constitution. You're violating the Constitution here, here, and here. And if you're not going to straighten up, we're going to pull you out of office. And we're not going to talk to you about this no more. But you go and start behaving yourself. And if that individual goes back, they're going to do the right thing at that point. That's how powerful those positions are. Wow. So if they don't do that point,
these are committee men.
The committee men. You walk the papers to recall that individual, and you can have an election set up within 90 days. It's a 90-day process to get the new election going and pull that guy out of office. The other way to get rid of these individuals is if they're violating their oath of office, that's a crime. Ultimately, we can indict them. So the people have two ways to do this, from the judicial process or the political process. We let the political process handle it because they can, as long as they're trained properly, and we are training people in the proper process. We have rewritten the rules. We came together here in New York, a group of us, elected committeemen that were not recognized back, 2011, I think, 2010, whatever year it was, 12. And we came together. We rewrote the rules. We had a convention, Democrats and Republicans together. We fused the parties back to the Jefferson Party, which is a Democratic Republican, which really was never meant to be a party. He was just trying to define the position because he was going up particularly against the Federalists. And Thomas Jefferson was a Federalist himself, but they had robbed the name and made it be something else. And so this is where this party things came up. And, Washington, the party started to grow off of that as time went on. And Washington was so upset about that when he was leaving office in his farewell speech, he spent a good probably 2/3 of his speech talking about the political corruptions and what's going to happen if this thing continues. And it's very powerful because exactly what Washington said would happen has happened. They have taken control of the entire process. And it's just a small group of people that have done this. And we found out how they did some of this process. They would oscillate the election so that they'd never lose power. You see, committeemen are supposed to all be flushed out, just like Congress is flushed out every 2 years, even on the even years. Everybody goes. And when you come back, you reform and restructure all power. It gets renewed all together in every 2 years. And what they have done is they shifted half of the counties, and they've done this in probably every state. Every state we found they've done this in. They've done this in New York. They've taken half of the counties, and they made them on elections on an odd year, and they took another half of the counties, they made it on the even year, so that whenever they flushed out the odd years and the new people coming in, they were met by the people who there was already a power structure there, and they fall right back under their power structure. They can't get it back. And that was our battle that we were trying to take through the courts, and the judges were not sophisticated enough to even understand what we were talking about. And that's why we knew we had to take it into the federal level, and then we combined it with this thing going on with the juries, and we've been working them both together. The militia has the same problem. There really is no true militia. We have what do you call it? What do they call that? They claim to be the militia, Gerard. Do you remember? Why can't I think of the name? They sent them all out of the country over, when they went to war out there in the Middle East. But in any event,
what'd you ask again? You talking about?
Who are they claiming to be the militia? It's the
Who's they? What do you mean they?
The militia. Who's the militia? The federal. Yeah.
The federal militia?
Well, the federal government controls them, and that's.
Well, you're talking about the National Guard.
National Guard.
I'm sorry. You know what? Okay. I didn't know what you were getting at, but now I understand. Okay.
The National Guard is ultimately is federal controlled. Even though the states are involved in this, it's federal controlled ultimately. All the funds, everything comes from that, and it's not really organic. We need a militia that's organic. The way it used to be years ago is that when you were born, you were given a militia number. Everybody belonged to the militia, and everybody
Oh, really?
participated.
Well, you
that's the
still
way
do.
it
That
is.
hasn't changed, John.
Yeah, but we don't have the number. They don't set that
Well,
whole
do you
system
need
up.
a number? Every
Well-
male under a certain age is automatically in the militia by virtue of his birthright.
Yeah, but
That's
it's
in
But
the
not.
nobody
Constitution.
knows that, though.
But
Yeah,
it's
but
not
there's
addressed.
militia clauses in the Constitution.
Right, but nobody's exercising those things because it's not addressed, and they have no
Well,
knowledge of it.
they're not exercising them until they exercise them. Like
Well,
I just got a
Not
question
even
on
aware
Skype.
of it.
Well, I got a question on Skype here from these people in, I don't know where they are. This is Nash, John, and he says, "Can you help me answer this question? I'm working with another group that's trying to do the same thing that we are, and the question is about Connecticut militias. We have counties in name only, no county government or sheriffs. According to the other group, we should be able to organize by town. What's your take?" And I told them, I said, every man in America is a militia member by virtue of his birthright, and you can organize any way the people see fit. There are militia clauses of the Constitution, and Brent Winters has a few books on it, and we have extensive militia courses on NLA and committees of safety. So you can organize according to that. We don't need permission.
And they will call you a terrorist.
I don't care what they call me anymore.
Well,
Those
that's
days
true,
are over.
But
John.
look, but it is well, it is true that those days may be over.
Those days
They're
are
coming
over. They can
close
say
to-
what. Look, we got the 3%ers. We got these guys protecting towns. That whole Timothy McVeigh thing that they did is over. They're done. And I'm sure that.
Well, look, that is true, and I don't want to argue that point. It's absolutely
Right.
true what you're saying, but there is a danger of people don't understand, and people don't.
I would be
Look,
afraid to say it in
First
public
of all,
here 4 years
if you're
ago.
gonna exercise power and authority, you have to know the power and authority and the sources, and you better
Right.
be able to lay that down. And that's what the book does, and that's what we're trying to do with sheriffs, is to lay down their power and authority, and that'll give them the backbone that they need to be able to go out and tell all these people where they can go and do the right thing.
How does this
You know,
affect
the militia-
police departments?
Well, police departments can still be, because ultimately police departments are private to a degree.
Yeah,
They
it's
really
a
make
business.
citizens arrest ultimately. The real arrest is made when they're handed over to the sheriff. That's where the real arrest takes place. Until then, it's almost like a citizen's arrest. New York City, for instance, which is a huge city, it's got 5 boroughs in it. There's almost 1 million people in every one of those boroughs. And then you have Long Island also, which is quite a few million people out there, and the 2 counties out there. They got, of course, the police down there. You got the New York City police, particularly in the 5 boroughs. And then they have the sheriff, which is appointed down there by the mayor. I believe it's the mayor. I'm sure it's the mayor. And therefore, the sheriff answers to the mayor and not to the people. And that
That's
just
not good.
destroyed the entire situation, because the mayor can fire him. Okay,
That's not
but
good at all.
nevertheless, a place like New York City or anything else, the sheriff needs to take over the top head control of that whole thing. Okay, and that's true in any city police. The town police probably pretty much the same thing. A lot of the small towns, the villages, if the law is being applied properly and people are no longer badgered and injured by all of this, traffic violations and different things that they get them on, all that disappears, their money dries up, the courts can't continue, and they fold down, and the towns can no longer afford the police departments, and they fall away, and that's it, they lose them. And that's what's going to have to happen, is they're going to have to fall away through attrition by not having the funding, because they're no longer getting the monies in. And the state is no longer getting the money in, where they send some of that money back into the different towns and places. But that means that when the state puts their funding into police support, it's got to be in the sheriffs, the county sheriffs. There are 62 counties in New York, and they got to participate in the funding of that, and it's got to come through the counties. But ultimately, a lot of it comes from the state, some comes from the federal government. And so they will be able to grow and take on a lot of police. Then they could take on the good police, the police that really, have a good record, and not necessarily the bad apples.
Yeah, well, they were saying that the bad apples, for example, that they not only do you have the bad apples, but you have the other ones that are there and are complicit with the bad apples.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, absolutely. But again, I think the times they are changing. I am noticing a closer move towards God. I am not objected to or assaulted verbally and often, very rarely now, because of my position and thinking on God, and I articulate God in everything we're doing. And I try to keep it away from being like religious instructions or anything, but we have to acknowledge the king of the court, because if the king of the court is not God, then it's a man.
Well, there's a difference between religion and God anyway. I mean,
well, absolutely.
Man-made religions and God is God.
Our founding fathers used the words nature's God. And
Well,
we can use that too. It's a little more comfortable. But the truth of the matter is we are Christians, and it's Christ who is ultimately the king of the court, and it is him who we made the covenant with, the Declaration of Independence. But the key thing about that is it goes back to our heritage all the way back into the Bible. When you go back into, you see the Jews, ultimately, they accepted everybody. You know, back then, Moses, for instance, when they left, a lot of people left with the Jews because they liked their thinking and their process and their law. And as they, wandered for the 40 years and were learning the law, other people that had contact with them wanted to live underneath their law because they saw it through their hearts. There was something right about this. And so, and that, of course, continues and is transferred right into Christianity. Christianity is a friend to all people. If you read into the Bible and you look at Jacob, for instance, you have Jacob and then you have Israel. Well, Jacob, his name was changed to Israel. And God speaks about those people who cleave to Jacob. Now, Jacob represents the and I don't want to get too much into this religion thing, but let me get this point out anyway, because it is very important, and we do have to deal with it in common law. Jacob represents the corporate body, the corporate Israel, or whether it be, and Israel is God's children, and it's a spiritual thing ultimately. But Jacob represents the corporate body, and so that would represent in our day the corporate church. And then Israel, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. That's being born again, and you become part of the spiritual body, the eternal body, that which is not seen. And it's above the corporate body. Now, those who cleave to Jacob are those people who are not necessarily Christian or back then Jews, okay? They were people from other places, but they were willing to live with the law that they were under and they were being governed by, and they're accepted. Nothing has changed. That's how America was built. It doesn't matter. You could be a Muslim, you could be an atheist, you could be whatever you want, and you're accepted in, and you can take power, you can take office, as long as you take the oath, and you can't violate that oath. And when a Marxist comes in or an atheist comes in and they bring forth Marxist ideas, and they go up and they use their political platform in order to destroy our Bill of Rights or our Constitution, well, that's subversion, and they have to be removed. They took an oath. And if they're not willing to take the oath, you can talk about your Marxism all you want. You can do whatever you want, but you can't incite a rebellion with it, and you can't get office and exercise that preaching off of your office. But in any event...
It's my understanding that the original pledge actually said, "I pledge allegiance to God" first, and the flag, and and went on.
No, I just recently heard something about that, and it was the opposite of what you're saying. I can't say I know the correctness on this because I never traced it.
Well, some of the old books of Saint Germain indicate that.
Well, I do know recently it was brought up that originally when they put this together, they did add God to it, and God has stuck with it for a long time, and now they're trying to remove it. And I saw this removal when I was a child. When I was going through school, I remember being in grammar school, I think in the 6th or 7th grade, then there was a public school literally across the street from the school I went to. I went to a Catholic school. And I remember when I was about the 6th grade, all of a sudden, I remember hearing my parents and other people talking about this problem with religion in school and so on and so forth. And they started to come over to our school for religious instructions. And, we didn't see that before that. And, but, there was a certain religious instructions were actually dealt with within in those schools. And I imagine people could decline from that if they wanted to. I was too young to know how that worked out. But the bottom line is they started to remove God. I remember the big thing, the first time I saw Xmas instead of Christmas. I was like, what's that? That was a movement to remove Christ from Christmas. I mean,
I just thought it was a shortcut way to to spell Christmas.
Well, people might think that, but that's what was going on, the X amount. So this big thing, God needs to come back. Children
definitely.
were taught in school out of the Bible. They were taught to read. They were taught morals. They were taught many things, the principles and the law. Everything came from the Bible. The Bible was the key book in the schools, in the rural areas particularly, and throughout the United States. And all of that has changed. But again, you don't have to be a Christian. You could be an atheist. You could be whatever you want, as long as you're willing to abide by the laws that the United States, that we created the United States under. You can become anything. You could become the president. Just don't violate your oath to the Constitution. That's
Okay, here's the thing. I got a question on that. When we talk about the oath, our original Constitution was hijacked in 1871, correct?
No.
No?
No. The original
Explain.
Constitution was rejected by the Anti-Federalists, but the debate. If you go back to the debate, you can follow debate. We have the debate on our pages, by the way. It's under Federalist papers, and we also have it in audio. So when you'll find it in PDF form. You open it up and you can click the audios and go through 1, 2, 3, all the way through all the Federalist papers. So you can listen to it as you read it if you want. But that was the debate for the Constitution, to create the Constitution. And what happened is when at the convention, let me read this. This is what happened, because the Federalists refused, and it was Jefferson and Madison, which were leading the Anti-Federalists, because they were against a very strong central government. They wanted a weak central government, and they wanted the states to be sovereign and on their own. And that's where we ended up being. And the only reason we ended up being there is because of the Bill of Rights. That's the key thing, particularly Amendment 10, which gives everything back to the states and the people. But it's the Bill of Rights that they really mastered to change this. So when they refused to sign up, they agreed, and I'll read exactly what they agreed to. It's in the Bill of Rights in the very top. In fact, I think I just read this earlier on. It says here, the conventions of the number of the states, having at the time of their adopting the Constitution, expressed a desire in order to prevent the misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. And as extending the grounds of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. So they agreed that they would accept the Bill of Rights. Now, originally there was 12 bills that they put together, and this is what we wanted. We wanted these 12 points in the Bill of Rights. And so they agreed to that. And so the Constitution was signed by everyone, and in 1791, finally the Bill of Rights came to be. Let me double check that date. Yeah, 1791, December 15, 1791, the Bill of Rights came to play and became part of the Constitution. And what that done was it required the Constitution, and this is very important, and I learned this from Bible studies. I learned many years ago. In the very beginning, I was blessed to have some good teachers, and one of the things I learned was you interpret scriptures by scriptures, line upon line, precept upon precept. And if there's a contradiction between it, you got to be looking to see what the problem is. Well, with the Bill of Rights, if there's a contradiction in the Constitution, in the interpreting the Constitution, the powers, the authorities, or whatever, or trying to put some new amendments in. If there is a contradiction between the Bill of Rights and anything else that's written in law, then it's null and void. It cannot come into power. It cannot come in conflict with it. It prevented the construction, and it's important. There is what's called lawful, legal construction, or construction of law. When you build a case with the construction of law, depending on what kind of case you're building. So they don't want the misconstruction. They don't want the abuse of powers. So I have a right to have a weapon, for instance, the Second Amendment. They're constantly trying to abuse that, Congress is. But the Second Amendment prevents that from happening. Now, these are unalienable rights, and we, the people ordained and established, we're the kings, we're above the Constitution. We are the sovereigns. That's why they can't make a law. We are the sovereigns. We're kings of our own domain. But we are governed by law. We're under the law of God. So if we break the law of God, of course, we can be punished under that law. We have to pay and take care of restoring the individual that we injured. But You read the entire, all legislation, you read in light of the Bill of Rights. You read the Constitution in light of the Bill of Rights. If a conclusion comes out that interferes with any of our unalienable rights, it's null and void. And that's how powerful it was. It's very interesting. And the 12 rights that they wanted to get in there, actually all of them got in there. They just came and numbered as 10. They combined a few of them. For instance, you can see there are a couple of, just in the First Amendment, you're looking about religion, free speech, freedom of the press, the right to assemble, and you're also looking at the right to redress your grievances with government or your courts or whatever the case may be. So they can't violate, and they violate all that every day. These no longer have any power or authority. People do not know that the Bill of Rights has been just cast aside. They're there and it's just there to entertain you.
Well, one of the things I think of right offhand is excessive bail. I know there's this change now with some states not having any or what have you. But the fact of the matter is, most of the people that get drugged through the court system are the low economic people because they don't have any way to fight back.
But they're drugged through the system with laws they didn't break. It's not illegal. Look at it. It's not illegal to put a needle in your arm. It may be illegal to sell it because they got the power to control, the commercial process of this thing, the trafficking.
They put people away for years for that.
I know, but they don't have the right or the authority to do that. Look at,
not tell a consenting adult what he can put in his body. I mean, although you get to a point where it's like suicide, that's a different thing. That's like, again, you're breaking the law of God.
That's touchy, but you still have to bring it to a common law court.
Right. I'm just saying there is parameters in there, and there are lines in the sand. Even look at the death penalty for premeditated murder. We know that the Bible provides for that. That man can take and kind of do God's justice and remove somebody by the death penalty by virtue of the fact that it was a heinous crime. It was premeditated as far as the evidence showed. And if 12 of his peers say so, then he gets the death penalty. But there's all degrees of first degree. That's why we have the degrees of murder, because not every murder is premeditated and planned in that.
Okay, I gotta bring something up here. Okay, since you're talking about murder, and that is something that I was recently found out about, and that is like the police union. For example, there was a policeman who has shot many people, and the last one he shot was in the back, and personally, I don't think anybody needs to be shot in the back. I don't care what they did. You can always get them later. But anyway, what happened was the police union gets them off every time.
Well, that wouldn't happen in a common law court. Okay, it just wouldn't happen. If the people control it, they wouldn't happen. Let's take different things. Like let's take drunk driving. Okay, someone is driving drunk. The cop is driving down the road and they're swaying all over the place. Whatever the case may be, they pull them over. They see that the person's intoxicated. So what do? Well, look, since there's no real law, for detainment and things, what the cop needs to do is take the keys away from them, make sure the person gets home, drop it off at the courthouse. Drop it off at the courthouse. Give it to the grand jury. Let the grand jury, because they are the deciders. They are the sureties of the peace. We go back into the Magna Carta. It lays this whole thing out. If there's a problem, the four of the jurists, which is the grand jury, that's why we establish 4 for every county. 4 of the individuals will come out, try to fix the problem. And if they can't fix the problem, they go back to the 25 and they give the problem to the 25, and the 25 then makes a decision what's going to be done. And if they don't apply, they don't comply to the decision of the 25, like they did with the king, the axe would come down onto the head. So if they don't comply, they send it in and they indict, they send it to the trial jury and they deal with it. So if you get a person, let's say drunk driving, why is the state making money on everything? I mean, no matter what happens, every conviction that takes place, they find them, but the injured party gets nothing. They just get thrown out into the street. They use them to get money, really. But drunk driving, so you drop the keys off to the grand jury. So they got to go down to the grand jury to get the keys to the vehicle. And so the grand jury then has the opportunity first of all, to make note that this has happened. You better not let it happen again. And say, look, we're going to send you need to go take a program. And you need to go do this or do that. They have the power and the authority to do that. And when that person does that, then they get their keys back. And until then, they don't. Now, they can give them back and make them, as long as they go do the proper thing. Now, if they don't do the proper thing, they have put the people in society in jeopardy. That's a wrongdoing. The people have to do something about it.
Then they're liable, John.
So
that's the problem with that.
Now they can indict, okay? And they can send them into the jury, and the jury can decide, all right? But, people have to think things out, and a lot of things have to be rethought out because we have a society with technology, and there are certain technological things, particularly, we have motor vehicles instead of horse and carriages, but we still, it's our transportation. If you have a horse and carriage, you're not going to run someone down. Okay, that's of course is against the law.
I just want to bring up another subject. What you're talking about the grand jury, that's nice, and it's in a perfect world. If we have everything fixed up. But also, I'm a concealed carry holder. I've taken gun courses and stuff. When to shoot and when not to shoot. And I'm going to tell you what the law says, and this goes all the way back to the Magna Carta, all the way back to biblical days. If you witness somebody in the commission of a felony, some guy's grabbing an old lady's bag and knocking her to the ground and running away, and you pull a gun out and you say stop, and he doesn't stop, you can shoot him in the back, because that property of that lady's is her life. It's life and property you're protecting. And he knows when he's committing a crime that he's putting his life in danger. Yes, you're shaking your head. No, look, that's the problem with these criminals.
Okay. Here's the thing.
If you know that you can run and they can't shoot at you, then why would you ever stop?
Why can't you shoot him in the leg or something like that? I don't know.
That's the cowboy stories. That's a bunch of baloney. You
Okay.
don't pull because
Can
then
I say something?
Well, I think we do have to.
How do you know he doesn't have a gun on him? You're taught to shoot for center of mass. We're not playing around. That business of shooting the cigars out of people's mouths and the guns out of their hand, that's all fantasy world. 98% of the time when a cop shoots at a person, he misses because he's under stress. And you're over there saying you should shoot him in the leg. So what happens if he hits him in the head? You going to hold him to that? Well, I was trying to shoot him in the leg, but my aim was off. His heart rate is at 160. And he can only shoot him if his hand is coming up on top of the lady to kill her. I'm telling you,
I don't know that
life
we want to
and
get
property.
too controversial here, but
It's not controversial. That's the law. That's what the cops are operating under.
Okay, well,
And yes,
can I say something? Can I
Yes, I'm
say
sorry.
something? Okay, I have a problem with that in the sense that, of course, that person was doing something wrong and heinous, okay? But they didn't kill the lady. That doesn't, some material thing in my book is not worth someone's life. Okay?
yeah, that's stealing. If you steal a
You
person's
knocked her
ox,
down on the
you've
ground.
gotta
You don't
give
even
them-
know if he killed her or if he did permanent damage.
But
And the
I
thing
think-
is to stop him.
Well,
To
look,
stop him.
again,
I mean, if he
even
dies, he dies. That's his problem.
well,
You're not supposed
again,
to be committing a crime like that. You're taking you made a decision when you made that bad decision to attack that old lady. You put
Well, I
your
think
life
that's
in
horrible.
danger.
Don't get me wrong.
Let's just agree to disagree
get me
on
wrong.
one, because
Don't get me
my
wrong.
position would be: look, if you steal someone's money, you got to give them back 3 times or 4 times.
Well,
the
I
amount.
wouldn't do
That's
it
the
because
penalty,
there's too
but
much.
the penalty-
There's too much iffiness on it.
the
But I'm just
penalty-
saying.
Well, that's the point. The point is that the crime isn't big enough to be able to have that happen.
Well,
I mean,
suppose he's running at you. He just knocked the lady
Well, now
down. And
it's
you got your gun out, and
self-defense.
he's running at you.
Yeah.
well, that could
And
be
you say
self-defense.
stop, and he doesn't stop. Look at these guys are on crystal meth, and you can shoot their arm off, and they'll still come at you and kill you. That's what the cops
Well,
are up
I
against.
think that's something.
I'm not kidding you. They went to bigger guns because when you're all hepped up on these drugs, I'll tell you what, in
The
Vietnam,
super strength.
that's right. They used to tie the Vietnamese boys they used to get these 12, 15, 16-year-old boys, and they used them as shock troops, and they'd take their drugs, and they would pre-tie tourniquets around their arms and legs so that when our troops shot their leg off, they could keep going, they could keep shooting their gun because they were under this superhuman strength. The cops in the city run into that. They run into these guys that they shoot them 5 times in the chest, and they still jump over the table and break the guy's neck because That's what you're dealing with. And you don't want a 38, you don't want a 22, you want a 357, you want something that'll stop.
Why don't we move from that which is
Okay,
controversial,
I'm just
'cause
telling you,
it's
that's the real world. I'm sorry, but look, at
here's the
somebody
bottom
coming
line.
in my house to kill my children or
You
do
see,
something like this, I'm going to shoot first and ask
That's a
questions.
whole different story.
Somebody coming in the door, I don't want to hear I should shot him in the leg. He came into my house. You see, that's where you start splitting hairs with this. Next thing you know, you're putting your family at danger. I can't second guess my family's safety. I don't pull a gun out unless I'm going to shoot with it. And if I'm going to shoot, I'm assuming the person's going to be dead, whether I hit him in the leg or where I hit him. Because you can hit somebody in the leg and they're dead anyway. You hit an artery, they're done. They're going to bleed out. So the whole thing is
let me say something about all this, because I was going to bring up the point of someone breaks into your house, which is a whole different thing. If you're in bed, you're sleeping, and someone breaks into your house, you have no idea what's going on. You take your gun out of your drawer, whatever it is, and you see someone in the house, whether they're coming at you or not, first thing you're going to do is shoot. And I agree.
And that's why the cops have to be careful.
Hold on. Let me finish my point.
Let
me finish my point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't think anyone would disagree with you except for people who are just that ignorant to the understanding of why people have guns and the right to defend yourself. Okay, but if you're in the streets and someone is running, this becomes very controversial, and this needs to be thought out maybe because we have situations that may not have been thought out properly. Some of the things that have been done in the past, even under common law, is not necessarily, righteous. We need to go back to the biblical principle. A biblical principle, if someone steals something and no one's life is in danger, let's take the pocketbook. And again, I don't want to make this a controversy. I don't want to debate it or anything, but I just want to bring a different position. And it's something maybe we need to think about and figure out how we're going to deal with things like this. I've given some thought with drunk driving. We have to deal with that. How are you going to deal with it? Well, this is an idea. And people in one county may decide another way to deal with it, but we have to figure out how to deal with these things that are difficult to figure out. So someone steals a pocketbook for someone, and they're running down the street. No one is in danger at that point, number one. And the biblical principle, that's stealing. The biblical principle is to replace 3- or 4-fold back to the individual. And then, of course, there's other injuries that, the fact that you traumatize that person is an injury, and that heightens the whole thing, of course, and so on. Whether you want to shoot that person is another thing. I don't think even the police department have the ability to do that. And again, whether that's right or wrong, okay, I have my opinions on it, but if it's right or wrong, we need to figure these controversial type things out and try to figure out what we would do.
Well, that's why you have a jury of 12 people.
Right. It gets back to the people on the local area on what they want to do when a situation like that occurs. And then we need to sit and think about, well, what are we going to do with that? And this here is really, let's take what we're doing at National Liberty Alliance. National Liberty Alliance is going to remain where they are as a service to continue to train people, even when we turn the courts and we get Constitution and our heritage taught in schools, we rebuild the militia, and all these things that we have to do. Even after that, there has to be somewhere where people can come and get their proper testing and have a proper education and get their proper qualifications and to fill the positions that they need to take, whether political or whether it's a professional in the judicial process to take a position as an administrator or whatever the case may be. And when the difficult problem comes up, it could be debated ultimately and thought about on a national level, and opportunities of how to deal with that could be put out, and people in different areas will take their own thoughts and ideas, and this is what we'll do in our county, and this is what we'll do in our county. But there's not that much really on that kind of a level. But let's go back to a weapon, okay? And this is an important thing. Every single child, and it used to be this way, okay? Every child should be taught how to handle a weapon, whether it's a handgun or a rifle. And this should be done in school. Some real liberal people.
They don't do anything practical in school.
but they need to learn and understand, because it is a right of the people to bear arms. And if it's a right of the people to bear arms, people should know how to bear arms. So we need to train the people. And if everyone is part of the militia, they need to be trained. And therefore, in school at a certain level, they need to be trained in shooting and proper care of a rifle or a weapon and understand the dangers and so on and so forth. And that would prevent a lot of accidents also at the same time. All right. Same thing with driving. Okay. Driver's licenses shouldn't be required. I mean, it's a nice idea and it's a good identification, and if people want it and the state wants to provide it, but they can't be required. But people should learn how to drive, and it's the responsibility because it is a part of society and today and with our technology. So they should be taught in school. When I went to school, I went to driver's ed. It was true I had to pay for that. I was 16 years old, and I paid, I think it was $100, but I learned to drive through driver's ed in school. And that's how people need to learn. They need to learn to drive because it's part of, they need to learn to speak. They need to learn to defend themselves. They need to understand their heritage so they can stick up for themselves in court. You shouldn't have to get an attorney. You can have someone give you advice, but you need to really, it's your case. You're the one who should be able to defend your position better than any attorney can. But if you can't, of course, you can have someone speak for you. But nevertheless, all these things people should learn. It's part of what we should know.
It should be part of the education.
Part of that. Huh?
It should be part of our
Absolutely.
education system.
Everybody should know. You know, when we sent our son to a Christian school for the first, he went to the kindergarten, first and second grade. We pulled him out after second grade because we were homeschooling our daughter because she was ill, and so we decided to homeschool him too. But when he was in school, by the time he was out of that second grade, he was reading at a 7th, 8th grade level to begin with. It was an excellent school, very small school, but it was a very pious Christian school. I was very impressed by it. And one of the things that they required of all the children is to be able to get up on a stage, either sing a song or put up a speech to address people. And you know, this is part of education, and everyone should learn that. All these things, we should have a good education. We should have a classical education. We should learn about the great conversations across time with the great people. That's called a classical education. That should be part of who we are. And when you give a child 8 to 12 years in school, you can surpass the college level that we have today, far surpass that level. And any school beyond that would be if you're going to become a doctor or something, you know, you want to get a doctorate in whatever it is that you want to study. But we don't do that. We don't have a good education. We have a good Marxist education taking place. And I'm dead serious on that. I've been in the schools, and I see what they're teaching children.
It's getting worse, too.
And I'm appalled.
It's getting worse.
Well, the world is definitely more vicious than it was 40, 50 years ago.
Oh,
you know, 50 years ago when you had purse snatchers, they snatched a purse and they ran. Today, you see these guys cold conking somebody with a brick. That's ridiculous.
I saw that.
I mean, look at that's. You got to understand that that's attempted murder, because if you don't know that you hit an 80-year-old lady in the head with a brick, that you could possibly kill her. That's horrible. So yeah, maybe I'm a little turned up because that's the stuff that I see. You know, 50 years ago, people were more, you know, benevolent, I want to say, and if they were stealing the purse, they were only stealing the purse to get some money. You know, but when you have
kill a person in the process.
Well, you see, when you're under the influence of these drugs and things like that, all you care about is your next fix. You don't care how you get them. And what happens is it completely deadens that part of the brain that has compassion. You become an animal.
A lot of that, I think, can disappear if we move the right way. First of all,
it will. It's only here because we're so lawless now.
Drugs should not be legal. If people want to take them, then that's fine. I mean, you know, look at the trafficking of drugs, of course, they control that. But if you legalize certain things like marijuana or whatever, then you wouldn't have all of these problems with these gangs because they may be selling drugs or whatever it is that they do. A lot of these drug exchanges just won't happen. The schoolhouse sales, so to speak.
Let's face it, the CIA brings the drugs in. Our government helps bring get the people addicted, and then they go through the court system.
And the sad thing is they'll put somebody that dealt pot in jail for years and years and years, and then all these horrible other noxious drugs, they let them out in the streets. They're killing people. You know, what's up with that? Well, you know,
Clinton was probably
pot makes them too friendly.
Yeah, right. Well, they want them in the jails. They don't cause any trouble. Have those guys, you know what I mean? You can't have these crazies in there. It's too dangerous for the guards, right?
Some of the major accesses of drugs coming into the United States, I understand, was when Clinton was governor, and he had was involved with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, with the
But
Mina
anyway,
airport and all
let's
that
get back
stuff.
to really what we really want to talk about, and that, of course, is National Liberty Alliance and the book and common law and the court
Yeah.
system. And,
What
how
is the
things work.
status of the common law grand juries at this point in time throughout the country?
Well, we have the potential. Well, let me tell you how we did this. Okay, when we decided to go forward with the grand jury, we made some mistakes in the beginning trying to structure it out, and we didn't really exercise any of those things. But we were trying to construct things, and every time we were trying to construct a way to do this, we'd come into a problem. It just didn't work right. And then we realized, well, okay, look, if we're going to create a grand jury, we can't just go around having people becoming grand juries in every state and not be educated and not even understand what they're doing or what the law is and the difference between law and equity. You need an education. You can't just let's go take the law in our own hands type thing and being ignorant to how things work and what law really is. It's only going to cause more problems. So we didn't want to try to establish grand juries starting acting up on their own and out of control, and I mean out of control of the law, not from a National Liberty Alliance or any group of people, but just out of control from the law. So what we decided to do is this, ultimately, is to say, well, okay, let's create, because we learned off of what they did here in New York, which was, I think, unlawful, but what they did is they pulled together all of the court systems, and they called it the unified court systems here in New York. And I don't know, they may have done this in other states also. So you have the village courts, which was separated from that. You have the town courts, which was separated at all these courts were separate. You had the village courts, the town courts, you had the county courts, the state court, and then, of course, you get into the federal level.
They had separate jurisdictions, I guess you can say, right?
Well, they didn't even have jurisdictions. They were nisi prius courts, and nisi prius means that unless you disagree, you're stuck in it. You have to agree to it. You have to.
Yeah, but they weren't allowed to do felonies at the town level. They were supposed
Well, they've been doing it before they unified.
They have now because they morphed it into that.
But they were doing it. Like they were doing it before they unified it, though. And that's probably why they unified them. But they created what was called the unified court system. So we thought, well, okay, that's interesting. Maybe we'll follow their lead, and we'll call this the Unified United States Common Law Grand Jury. Now we're interested in the federal level only, and the reason why we're interested in the federal level is because we win there, we win in every state of the union. Okay, because ultimately the ultimate decision of the law ultimately brings us into the Supreme Court. Now, they can only make decisions on constitutional issues, but we, the people, when we take the court and bring it in, we're higher than the United States Supreme Court, and once we make the decision, it applies to every court system in the United States, such as a constitutional decision by the United States Supreme Court. It's similar, it's the same. So we take this into the federal court, we rule there, we win there, and then we can force every state to obey the law. Because that's what we're looking to do, is to force them to obey the law of the land. So we created what was called the Unified United States Common Law Grand Jury. So in order to make this have some validity to it and some appreciation and power, we really had to go down into every county. So we started touring. We started touring New York State, and we had been touring New York State before this with the committeeman thing. So we started touring New York State, and we went in to introduce the people in every county. Sometimes some counties we'd pull 2 or 3 counties together and meet in a good location, and we'd have people come together. We introduced them to what we were doing, and that we're creating common law grand juries throughout the nation and forming one unified United States common law grand jury. So we called it reconstituting. We reconstituted the common law grand jury in every single county. We did this in New York, and we had our members working throughout the whole United States, and we visited all 3,000 plus, counties, with the exception of some counties like in Alaska and in rural places where you can't even get to.
So you've been in Arizona?
We've been in Arizona. We've been in every state of the union. Hawaii.
Well,
We've
not,
been in
not
Alaska.
particularly John
Not
and
me
I, but
personally.
our
No,
members.
our members.
People from that state that wanted to do it, we gave them the plan. We told them how to set it up, how to document it properly under common law, and we gave them the methodology. And they went out and did it in their states. And when they accomplished it, they returned the paperwork to us with the seal on it. And then we
had a counter on our website,
right,
counting the counties until we did with 3,134 counties, which at the time was the number of counties at the time. And so we have gone in to unify every single county. And so then all of the counties came together, okay, and they formed a unified state common law grand jury. Then the unified state common law grand juries came together, and we formed the unified United States common law grand jury. And it was agreed upon that the only papers that would be filed would be the filing the papers through the unified United States common law grand jury until we can win back the courts and do this a little more properly. And this way, we don't have 1,000 people doing 1,000 different things, which may even contradict each other. So we had to be very careful putting this whole thing together. And so everything we do is very, very carefully researched. We get a lot of opinions from other people. We have a common law lawyer that's been working with us now a couple of years. His name is Brent Winters. He's an author, and he's a common law lawyer. And as a matter of fact, his website is commonlawyer.com. And so he's come in, he's helped us a lot because he's helped us to understand a lot of the procedures in the court that we don't know about, and to give us some thoughts and ideas. So everything we try to do it in a way as much as we can that's familiar to the court system. But we do extraordinary things. We do, at some point you can't, there's no way we can work with the court in the way that they have it. But we try to, be as look as lawful in their eyes as possible, let's say. And a lot of things they do is right. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of things they do is wrong also. So the point of what we're doing is we don't want people to be doing anything like opening grand juries and doing anything until we get a foothold in the system by winning the federal. So everything we're doing is to win this federal case. And the other thing is, at the same time, is to educate the people. They need to become qualified. In order to become an administrator of a grand jury, of the juries within your county, we have 3 courses that must be taken, and we're working on. And they have to get the book, or at least everything on our website to learn as much as they can. But we have 3 courses that they have to take. We've written 3 handbooks, one for the petit jury, one for the grand jury, and one for the sheriffs and the administrators. And then we're working on the final booklet, which is a book for administration for the administrators, which how to orientate the juries, what's the proper process, being careful not to, taint the juries. We can taint the juries without even realizing it. So we have to bring certain issues up. There must be a vow taken, but not only the administrators, but those people who sit as jurists, particularly as grand jurists and trial jurists, of course, they have to take a vow, and a vow to God. And that vow is just that they promise to operate with a sense of honor, justice, and mercy. And anybody who exercises and is obedient to that vow that they take, they're going to do the right thing, and they're going to get the right results at the end of the day. Whether it's a conviction or an acquittal or an indictment or no indictment. So that's how we structured. Now, they can't say that we're just a small group of people out of New York in one county or one state. No, we are in every single county throughout the entire United States. We have formed everywhere. We had 9,000 members, and we're stretched out through the entire United States. And so we're trying to do things in a very orderly and in a very common law way, and we structured ourselves under as the first grand jury, the first known recorded grand jury, which brings us back to the Magna Carta. And so we structured ourselves under the rules of the Magna Carta, which is part of our process. The Magna Carta is the law of the land as much as our Bill of Rights. As a matter of fact, interpreting through the Magna Carta, a lot of the stuff that we have in our Constitution, particularly the Bill of Rights, is in the Magna Carta, and it all goes back down to the main thing, the right of property. And the first property you own is your body, then the land, and anything that extends off your body and the land you own, it's your property. So they can't say we're a rogue group and we did it as lawful as possible. And that's why I believe they fear us. They've been out, they've come to my home many a times. We've met with the Treasury Department who came out after us, and FBI agents and all these other things.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, in every single meeting, I think one almost went bad, but remember the meeting we met and we had the Treasury agents and
Yeah, I don't want to remember. Yeah.
It must have been kind of bad, huh?
maybe it
Oh,
was
my
a good
goodness.
cop and bad cop. Okay, who knows?
Yeah,
But with that,
I don't know.
it
It
might
was,
have been
it, was
a
a
little
little,
conflict.
it was a little hairy, and even though I acted very cavalier, it was not fun.
But basically, ultimately, all of the
On the
meetings I
bottom
had, all of the different
No, I
meetings
wanted to run. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Never mind.
all of the different meetings I had with the FBI, particularly, first of all, I told them why I knew they were there. That some judge, they don't answer that question, but I know the judge. We go to court, and all of a sudden the FBI is knocking on that door. I know the judge made the phone call, because we're in the federal courts to begin with, and but. They said, look, did you say this? This is what I said, yeah, but actually I really didn't say that. If you go down, there's a footnote, and the author of that really was Thomas Jefferson or George Washington or Benjamin Franklin.
Look, they're
No.
great
the
at
United
taking.
States Supreme Court.
They're great at
That's
taking
what they
things out
said,
of
not me.
context. You know what I
I'm
mean?
just-
I mean, they showed them
Oh.
half our paperwork or a paragraph. Down,
Exactly.
you know
They
what I
do
mean?
that
Yeah,
all
so-
the time.
Look at these
I
guys.
said-
Look at these subversive terrorists.
I said, all I'm doing is reiterating what our founding fathers have said, and they're looking. And I'll tell you what, every conversation I've had with these people always left pretty good. And they said, no, this case is closed. We don't see nothing here. And they left. The only one that became a little touchy was the one with the Treasury. One guy seemed to be, kind of one thing, and the other one, we talked about the color of law, and he didn't understand it. The last time I had
It's a
an
major
FBI
problem.
visit was probably, I don't know, about 4 or 5 months ago. Actually, I think that happened when I was online having a meeting, and I was called away, and I had to go talk to these guys. But the last time I had that, we were talking, and I mentioned to them, well, because they asked me some question. They said, "You sure that's true?" I said, "Well, look, it is a crime to lie to a federal agent, especially when you're doing when you're out there and trying to find out what's going on, investigating." And the other FBI agent, I can't believe he didn't know this. He said, "Really?" And the other FBI said, "Yeah, he's right." So I made right up front, I'm not going to lie to you, and anything I'm telling you is absolute truth. And all of my positions are really positions of our heritage, our founding fathers, our United States Supreme Court rulings, especially when they were really good. That's all we do. There's nothing in our book, for instance, or on our website that you can find that you can't trace to the source. We give the source of everything we say. We don't want people to believe what was written. Because someone wrote a book or wrote a paper or posted it online or whatever it is, and people, it's written down, it must be true. Well, we need to stop that thinking. We need to question everything we see, and we need to know the source. Where did that come from? And we show the source of everything we do. I would say the book Consent of Government is over 1,000 pages, and it's got a table of contents which will allow you to really, once you go through the book, you'll be able to find your way through the book through that table of contents to be able to.
And
draw
when will
things
this book
out
be out? In
for what you
November?
need. My contract is for December, but they agreed to try to get it out in November. So we're pressing for that.
That'd be good.
So it'll be released in November. We're taking pre-orders. We need pre-orders. We're trying to sell. We got the. Let me finish off my point I was trying to make here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which I forgot anyway. So let me go on to that one.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Hey, John, did you mention that U.S. versus William paper? Because I had to leave for a couple
Yes.
minutes, so I don't know.
Yeah, I
Okay,
spoke
you did
about
touch
that.
on it. That's important that people know that.
Yeah. All right. Well, look at what we got going right now is a campaign for constitutional sheriffs. We got about 3,100 sheriffs in the United States, and we need to get this book into the hands of every sheriff. We need to give them the understanding. And again, everything we do is footnoted. This book, and here's where I lost my place. This book has over 1,000 pages, and I would say 1/3 of the book is sources and footnotes on the bottom of every single page. Okay, so and that's without exaggeration. If you read any of our papers, every paper we've written and put into the court, we put footnotes to prove every single phrase or word or sentence or point that we put forward.
That's painstaking, but that's awesome.
And well, and that's what had to be done. This is 10 years of research, this book. Mm-hmm. And so this book was put together mostly focused in on the sheriffs. I mean, everybody needs to know this, and everybody needs to really should buy this book and get educated, the education that you never had. But the sheriffs need to be educated. We have spoken to sheriffs who do not know the law. The sheriffs who want to know, but they don't know what to do or where to go. You have sheriffs associations who don't even try to form an education for the sheriffs within the states, all the county sheriffs. They have association state, and they even have a full U.S. association too. And none of them work on a proper education, which is teaching them the Constitution. They're constitutional officers. They're not code enforcement officers. And so this is what this book really was written for, but it was also written for the person. And we need to get a book into every sheriff's hands. So our mission is this campaign for constitutional sheriffs. And if you go to our front page, nationallibertyalliance.org, and you come down just a little bit and you click on the tag that says, let me see exactly what it says. I got this open on my front page here. It says, donate to save our republic to NLA's campaign for constitutional sheriffs. And when you click on that page, ultimately it gives a good overview of the book and what we're doing. And let me just read just a couple of little lines here or there. Because the government failed in their duty to assure a proper education in our schools, it is the duty of the people to self-educate, educate their sheriff, and educate our children. This is the purpose of National Liberty Alliance. Join us to save our republic by returning America to a government by consent of the governed via an education. And so we have basic information of what we're doing with this project, which we're asking people to buy their sheriff a book. Okay. Now, at the bottom of this paper here, I write, or this page, our goal is to send a copy of the book, Government by Consent, to every sheriff in America. Please click on and print out the form below. Fill in your sheriff's information and send it with a check or money order in the amount of $50 per book, which includes tax, shipping, and handling. And a copy of the book will be mailed to your sheriff. If someone else in your county has already sent a copy to your sheriff, we will use your funds to send a copy to the sheriff in a county close by. We must educate all of our 3,133 sheriffs and the people in order to secure our republic. Below, I give a table of contents of the book and a preface of the Government by Consent. Now, if anybody goes out there and reads our preface, if you go to the bookstore and you're going to buy a book, you look at the cover, you look at some comments about the book, and if that interests you, then the next thing you do before you buy the book is you start reading the preface or the introduction. Yeah. So I put the preface, the introduction or the preface up here, and you can click on it, and it says,
John, can't you share your screen? Can he share his screen?
Yeah, you can.
You can share your screen, John, and make things a lot nicer.
All right, how do I do that?
Where it says share screen?
Share screen, click it, but when you click it, two little boxes are going to come up on the bottom, and you have to.
Do I have to click on the more to see this? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
No, on the bottom where the mic is and all that?
I see that.
Well, go, and then it says participants chat.
Oh, okay, I had to make it bigger. Okay, share screen. Let me share the screen.
Right, so do that.
So let's see, screen number
one. And then there's a box going to come up, and you got to make sure that you click those two little boxes on the left side.
There you go.
Share audio. Did it go?
Okay, I got it.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so this is, let me go back to how I got here. We'll come back to the main page. This is our front page. Only the people can save America, and that is the truth. Look at President Trump can bring us back to where we belong. He could make America great, but if the people don't go bring us back to a government by consent, by stepping up and taking control, which only can happen by education, As Jefferson said, if a people expect to be ignorant and free, they expect what never was or never will be. So forget about it. You can't have liberty without the education of what liberty is and how to have a government by consent. So anyway, that's what we're all about. Now, we have NLAs planned. You can join NLA. You can donate to NLA. Now, here is a 7-minute video, which I'm not going to play, but it's only 7 minutes, and it gives an overview of our project, which is to donate to save our republic to NLA's campaign for constitutional sheriffs. So if you click on that, you'll then come to this page, the campaign for constitutional sheriffs, which is what I was reading on before I started sharing. The 7-minute clip is in here also. Now we have, click here to print the order form, but you can go, now originally I was trying to sell this book for about $39. I was trying to even get it less than that. I figured it would be, I was trying to calculate it, and when I was working with my publisher before they gave us a price, I was thinking, well, if we figure $29.95 and then figure $10 to cover tax and handling and all that stuff, the $39 or $39.95 would be plenty. But then we did sell a few at that price, and we're going to honor that price. But then I got the price back from the publisher, and they said the book's going to be $48.95.
Well, that includes shipping, though, right, John?
No.
Oh,
$48.95 is what the book cost, and that's what they're selling it for. So I figured, well, okay, look, I'll take a little bit of a loss on my end, and I'll just pump up the extra $1.05, make it even $50. So it's $50 for the book. But let me tell you, it's a huge book. It's packed. It is everything you wanted to know about liberty and was afraid to ask. Everything you wanted to know about your heritage, how the court system works, the difference between law and equity, what's up with all of these codes, all these things we've been talking about in this program today. It's in this book, okay? So it starts off, the retail price is $48.95, but we're selling it for $50. And it's being published by Dorrance Publishing Company. They're pretty big. They've been around over 100 years, and a lot of people are aware of them, so they're well known. The book dimension, the size, the binding, the cover, and so on. But the table of contents, and this is where you'll click to read the preface. So if you click on that, a PDF will open up on another tab, and here's our preface. Now read our preface, and I'll guarantee you that I'd be very, very, very surprised if a person has an interest in this and reads this preface and doesn't say, I want this book.
I mean, that's what I did. I said, I want to get this book.
We really gave a good synopsis of what is inside this book here.
Yeah, it's good.
And so anyway, we have government by consent, chapter 1. We have law, chapter 2, covers a lot of things, law and equity, the difference between the two, a true republic, self-evident truths. We get into the rudimentary precepts of the common law, the courts, everything you can think of here on this. We tackle American history, the birth of a nation, history of common law, subversion, Christianity, prerequisite to justice, and so on and so forth. We do have I thought it would be in here, but it's not, history of the sheriff. We do cover a part. Well, let me go through this, and I'm sure I'll pick up on it here. We got the grand jury, the petit jury, and the grand jury. What's a hung jury? Is hung jury lawful? Is there such a thing as a hung jury? Which ultimately there is no such thing as a hung jury. They go back and they stay until they finish and make a decision. Or they come out and say, we just can't do it, let them go. So anyway, history of the sheriff, got a lot of information on that, their job and authorities and so on, due process. The court system, courts of law, courts of record, and pro se litigants. We have huge information here on this. Introduction to the founding documents. Okay, now this is where I address the founding fathers and slavery. Okay, and this is what I get so frustrated listening to people talk, news media people, even people trying to justify our founding fathers and slavery, because they're so ignorant to what really was going on back then. They didn't understand. Our founding fathers, first of all, they were not born into the United States. It didn't exist then. They were born into a British occupied, there was colonies. They were British control. They were under British law. And they're the ones that brought the slavery in, not the United States. We, the people, didn't do that. And so they grew up with this. George Washington was 11 years old when his father died, and he inherited all his slaves. And it was just part of society, the way it was. It was just something that, it was accepted. And people didn't give a lot of thought to it. Thomas Jefferson was 14 years old when his father died, and he inherited slaves. And when his wife died, when his wife's father died, his father-in-law died, he inherited all of his slaves. He never purchased a slave in his life. He never beat a slave in his life. He never had to chase down a slave in his life. There's a lot of history about all this, and this is all documented stuff we're talking about. Now, what happened was is that Thomas Jefferson, as a matter of fact, said his very first memories of childhood was being in the hands of a slave. Okay, because they were like grandmothers to him.
They used to nurse the babies.
Yeah, they took care of the children, and
they used to retire them at 53 years old, give them a piece of property, and let them live on the plantation for life. That was not a bad life considering where they were before, because a lot of them, their own countrymen, they used to have wars and they would sell them into slavery. That's how they got caught into slavery. You know what I mean? They lost a tribal war and they sold them into slavery. They put them on the ship, brought them to America, and sold them as slaves. So then they come over here, and if you ended up most of these guys didn't abuse slaves because, you paid a lot of money for a slave. First of all, you didn't buy them to beat them. You bought them to make them work. If you buy a Mercedes-Benz, you're not going to beat it. You're going to change the oil and all that stuff. And they knew that. The one thing about the African slaves is, they had Irish slaves. They had all kinds of slaves back then. It wasn't just black people. But the black slaves could take in the sun better. So I just read this, in Making of America. He discussed that. They weren't. But
that doesn't make slavery right, though.
No, it doesn't. But I'm saying it's not the picture they've tried.
It was not that bad as there are situations, of course. There are evil people who own slaves.
Always, even today.
But let's go back to the mindset of what was going on here. Thomas Jefferson had this ferocious desire of learning. He spoke many languages. People who met Jefferson, there's a great book out called The Real Thomas Jefferson. There's also The Real Benjamin Franklin, The Real George Washington. Very powerful books, and they're all documented books. They have sources in it where everything comes from: communications, letters between founding fathers and others, and just all kinds of sources of information. And Thomas Jefferson was a highly, highly educated individual, one of the highest educated. Him and Madison, they were like bookends, they said. One complemented the other. One would start something and the other one would finish. They were both highly, highly educated. Jefferson was older, and I think he had a lot to do with influencing Madison and really to some degree tutoring him. I imagine they both had private tutors when they were growing up, and they were taught all the classical works. So they were highly educated, and they had this ferocious desire to learn more and more and more. They spoke many languages and so on. And in the book, that particular book, it talks about Jefferson talking with an individual and talking different subjects. And they were on a train or something. They were traveling, or maybe they were in a coach traveling somewhere. And at the end of the journey, the individual had written about this and said, when I was talking with him, he started talking about religion, and I thought he was a preacher, a pastor. And then as we went on, he started talking about medicine, and I thought he was a doctor. And it went on and on and on to all of because Jefferson studied many, many different things. And he was into the great conversations, the great works. And he was also very, very interesting in the Enlightenment of the 16th century, Locke and others. And so he read all those things. And he was the one that brought the Enlightenment to the other founding fathers. And so our founding fathers, who were all involved in this, of course, with the Declaration of Independence, and from that point forward. And Jefferson was pretty young back then. I think he was something like 26 when he first was a legislator.
They were all quite young.
Yeah, this is in the 70s, before 76, but it's in the 70s, I believe, 1770s. And he was a legislator. He was chosen to be a legislator for Virginia, and his first order of business was trying to get rid of slavery. And he couldn't push that through, and he really realized that, so he really was pushing for the ability to emancipate slaves, because in Virginia, it was against the law to free your slaves.
Oh my
you
God.
had to sell them to someone else, so you couldn't give them. And Jefferson's position was that he refused to sell his slaves. He didn't want to be involved in the trade. And now, why don't people know these things? I don't know.
Because they don't teach it in school.
He was sent back a second time as a legislator for a slate, and again, he tried to do the same thing, to be able to free the slaves and to educate them. He said he couldn't just free the slaves, because it was also against the law to educate them. So they shouldn't be. They didn't want
keep them stupid, right?
Right.
Just like what they want to do to us now.
Exactly. That's where we're at.
It was so bad. It was so bad that Benjamin Franklin thought that they were so dumb they couldn't be educated, because they were just lost people. That's what he thought. Until an individual he met took him to a school in the north, and he was up in the north himself. He was in Pennsylvania, but he took him to a school where black children were learning. And Benjamin Franklin went in there and saw what was going on and the education that was taking place, and his whole thinking changed. And matter of fact, he was able to free his slaves. He had some slaves and he freed them. But going back to Jefferson, Jefferson twice went into the legislature to really make laws to loosen up, to be able to free the slaves, to emancipate them, and to educate them. And then he was governor, and he tried to influence it, and he still couldn't get it through. Okay, and then of course he did the Declaration of Independence, and all men are created equal. He believed that, black man, white man, it doesn't matter. He believed all. As a matter of fact, in the original Declaration, the original paperwork, he had the name Jesus Christ in there. He didn't have nature's God. There was the committee changed that. Benjamin Franklin, I forget, and him, and there was a third person. Maybe it was Adams. I don't think it was Adams. I forget who the third person was. But anyway, the committee, they felt, that's too strong, let's change it. And so they
wasn't Madison very big on in the language?
Not on the Declaration of Independence. Madison was the key individual for the Bill of Rights. Jefferson was traveling at the time. He was overseas, and I think he was serving overseas some position. I forget what it was.
Are you familiar with the book Washington and His Generals?
I'm sorry?
Are you familiar with the book Washington and His Generals?
No, I'm not. No. But anyway, he comes up with the Declaration of Independence. Okay, now he's now communicating. Jefferson is the guy. Okay, anything to be written, anything, give it to Jefferson, because him and Madison, they would just take something and they brought masterpieces. They brought the Declaration of Independence. They brought the Bill of Rights. They were the instigators of the anti-federalists that tried to prevent a very strong federal government. And again, they worked endlessly trying to change the way of slavery, particularly in the South. 2 states refused to sign the Constitution if they were to outlaw slavery. And that's one of the sins of America. With the mindset I have, if I was back there, I would have tried to convince them, forget those 2 states. Let's go forward. God will bless us better. Because I think that's why the Liberty Bell kept getting cracked. Liberty Bell was cracked twice. I think that's the finger of God. Of course, it was poor construction was the purpose. It was what was behind the cracked Liberty Bell. But the cracked Liberty Bell, talks about liberty, and it quotes the Bible. God's finger came down and cracked that bell. Well, it was dropped and cracked, actually. But in any event, he brought the Enlightenment to the founding fathers. Washington. Franklin was the elder, but it was Jefferson who really brought the enlightening of the 1600s, the 15th century, 16th century. No. 17th century would be the 1600s. So he brought the Enlightenment movement to the founding fathers, and that's what they embraced. And that's and now the United States hasn't been created yet. Okay, they're in the process of creating this. They got an alliance. They're bringing the 13 colonies together, and they're going through repentance now, all of them concerning the slavery. They're realizing this is wrong. So, like any person, anything in any country, but let's take people. As any person, we're all sinners, and we have to come to a point of repentance. Thank God we have a God that forgives sins. Otherwise, we're held to that. People hold our founding fathers to the slavery. That wasn't their fault. And when they came conscious of it, they not only repented, they built a nation trying to get rid of it. So they set everything in order. And again, you go into the book, we go into a lot of this. But they sent everything into order into such a way that eventually they knew that slavery would be banned in America. They prevented the expansion of slavery out into the West. They prevented the new states coming in to have slaveries. They kept pushing for emancipation and all of these things. And when Lincoln speaks about this, and he refers to the founding fathers, they were not for slavery at all, but they set the stage for me to be able to free the slaves. So when people talk about Jefferson, that he's a contradiction, that he writes the Constitution, he writes the Declaration of Independence, says that all men are created equal. What a hypocrite he was. I get so upset about that. I mean, I gotta suck it up, but it just upsets me, the ignorance, and that people continue to, just regurgitate these lies and things. And so anyway, that's covered in the book, Anti-Slavery Efforts, Jefferson and Slavery, what Abraham Lincoln said about our founding fathers and slavery. And our founding fathers, eventually how it all worked out. We got on the Declaration of Independence. We get into details on that. We get into the details in the Constitution of the United States. We look detailed at the preamble. There's a lot in the preamble to the Constitution. That little paragraph, which we read twice in this conversation we've been having, that little paragraph of the preamble sets the stage for 6 directives that everybody in office is focused in on. Government's purpose is to fulfill one or more of each one. By any action they do, is to fulfill one or more of those directives. And I think it should be read again, and I'm going to read it again. It says here, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, to establish justice." So the purpose of the Constitution and the purpose of every elected official, number 1, is to form a more perfect union. 2nd, to establish justice. 3rd, to ensure domestic tranquility. 4, to provide for the common defense. 5, to promote the general welfare. And the most important, that umbrellas them all, is number 6, to secure the blessings of liberty. Now that's key. The word blessings is there. We can't have liberty unless God blesses us with his liberty. Anybody who thinks you can have liberty, true liberty, without acknowledging God and receiving the blessings of God, they have no idea what they're talking about. The liberty we must be blessed with. And this is our heritage, okay? So secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We do ordain and we do establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And who ordains but a king, okay? So we the people are the king. We are above the Constitution, and everybody within government is under the Constitution. They can make no law, trying to control our behavior. That's our job. That's between us and God. And if we break God's law by injuring another individual, do no harm. That's simple. If we break that law, then we fall under the common law to be corrected by that. And we will be corrected by common law in a proper court. Now, anyway, going back here, so we have the legislative powers in Article 1. We go on to the whole Constitution. Every article we go into, and we go back and look into it and talk about it and talk about the things going on at the time and how it came to be, and the meaning of these things. Then we talk about the committee man. Hang on a second. Let me shut this phone off. So we got the committee man. We got the militia. And we got the memorandums of law. We got the plan to save a republic. which puts the whole book together. Everything in his book is all tied together to that one point. What our plan is to save this republic, which is to get the proper education, to be able to reform, reconstruct the militia, work with the sheriff, to be able to get the people involved and teach them to become committeemen at least once in their life, participate in the political process for 2 years once in your life. Also to bring the court system back into justice and to have courts of justice again, which is run by the people, and that's the only lawful court that could possibly be. Remember, we receive our powers and authority from the highest power in the universe, and that's the governor of the universe, the king of all, and that is God. So God, that covenant we made with God with the Declaration of Independence, we need to understand that was a covenant we made with God. In return, we wanted to live under his laws. And in return, live under his laws, he blessed us with liberty. Now, we've come far from that. And he, in the Bible, we read, my people, they perish, for lack of knowledge, But anyway, then we have the appendix or the appendices. I don't know how to pronounce. How is that properly pronounced? Anyone know? Appendices?
Appendices, I think.
Appendices, I believe, too,
yeah. It wouldn't be appendix, but appendices.
No, that's in your stomach.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, we have some good stuff here in the appendix. We've got Trump's inauguration speech. If anybody hasn't heard that, they really need to read this, because let me tell you, you would think he's one of the founding fathers. Trump is one of the greatest presidents of no doubt in our lifetime, number one. He could only be second to our founding fathers. There's no one. And Lincoln, maybe. Lincoln is really trashed pretty bad, and I'm not sure. I hear stories back and forth. He did have a certain ignorance about him, because he really didn't understand the powers behind what was trying to do to take over this nation. I don't think he understood that and realized that.
I think Trump is being protected by God and his angels and so on as well.
Oh, absolutely.
He wouldn't be there.
He wouldn't be.
He would not be there. Look at the trail of bodies behind Hillary. You think she would have let him go?
Yeah.
Right, so anyway, now we have a lot more in this book that's not listed here per se, and I could see if I can find this. Let me see if I can find this real quickly. Trying to think of the name of what it was. No, it wasn't there.
We'll be coming up on 3 hours, by the way.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get this another time.
That's okay. Go ahead.
We're only halfway through the appendices.
Huh? We do have more information concerning directing people to the book. To the website. For instance, we have an education here. We have courses. You could take a civics course. We have a free militia course. We have a government by consent course. And if people want a certificate, they can get a certificate of completion for those. And so
I'm
you
going to do your Constitution
online.
one. Yeah.
Now, the free constitutional course we don't have anymore because government by consent covers it. We leave it here because people have started that and they need access to finish it. I think only the people taking the course can see that right now. And, since I'm an administrator of the site, I obviously see it. So you may not see that.
No,
but
I think it's still there.
Government by consent, covers a much more in-depth, much better the study of the Constitution. We also have a higher education. Our education goes further than that. Of course, we have all our founding documents. We have the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, biographies, state constitution. Just to take a quick look on just the founding documents alone, we got the 13th to 16th Amendment, Anti-Federalist, we got the Bill of Rights, the Common Law Handbook. We have just a lot of stuff. We have the Magna Carta, the Militia Act 1792, Washington quotes, Farewell Address Washington. That's a very, very powerful address. 2/3 of this, I mentioned, covers the problems with parties. We need to refuse. We did this in New York. We could do this everywhere. Bring the Republican and Democratic Party, bring it back under one party system, and bring it back to just a party, just ultimately a government under the Constitution. We don't need parties.
Wow,
As a
yeah,
matter of
that's really a
fact,
great idea. I like that a lot because,
as a matter of fact, I'm writing a paper on Leviathan in politics, and that's a biblical picture of Leviathan. You read about Leviathan, called the sea monster, and ultimately it's in politics. And who was it? I don't remember who it was. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger so I can see that. By Thomas Horace. Let me go back. In any event, he spoke about this, and this is going back to the Enlightenment, back into the 1600s. Okay, but basically, our government was structured in such a way that the politics and the political process, all this conversation, political conversation, it doesn't belong in our political conversations. It's all about deceit and lies. It has no place in our politics.
And then then you have the lobbyists and all that other crap. It all
Right.
comes down to money.
So I'm writing a paper on that right now to try to lay out how really the conversation should be between our elected individuals. And so anyway, I'm working on this right now. And I'm going to try to get. I'm going to get.
An article today that the guy said, "Look, we have to preserve that Libertarian Party, even if you don't agree with it, because these two parties, they really stink. We got to have something else to go."
We don't need any of them.
Well, there's no reason
that's the
for
long and the short of it.
The only reason for parties is to set one group of people against the other, and this is not what we're about.
Division.
We're about having Division. Government, and then for them to exercise the administration of government. We don't need them to be talking about altering our Bill of Rights or any of those things.
That's right. I like that idea.
Let's see. We wrote. Let me read just a paragraph or two of this. These subverts speak with the intent of talking about, politics in America and really in the world. These subverts speak with the intent to mislead and deceive. This is not the way of a lawful republic. Their tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. It defiles the whole body politic and sets afire the course of nature, and it is set on fire to fire of hell. Leviathan is metaphoric for the dominion of the prince of power of the air, also known as Satan's narrative in this world. The Lord said that in due season he would send a sore and great sword to punish Leviathan, that piercing, crooked serpent, and that he would break the heads of Leviathan in pieces, and that his destruction would be meat. This is key. This would be meat for this is a prophecy. Be meat for the people. And it's a biblical prophecy. I'm not making this up, This is God's words. In other words, the people must see the privacies, and justice satisfied in His court of law, as they consider, are these the men that made the earth to tremble and did shake kingdoms? For the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous, and His ears are open unto their prayers. But the face of the Lord is against them that do evil. And who is He that will harm you, if ye be followers of that which is good? Our servants need to be discussing and managing the policies and affairs of the state, and that they have been charged with such as the functions and the administrations of government, not the depriving of our common law liberties of the people. And this is where I left off. George Washington said, and I just got a lot of notes and stuff. So I'm working on this paper, and I'm going to get this into the book, Leviathan and Politics, and how we have to remove the beast from the politics, from the political process.
We definitely
and
do.
Get back into conversations of common law. How can we build a better place for the people? It's not about me being empowered because I have some political, seat in Congress or whatever the case may be. No, it's about how can we make this country great? How can we make country great again? I believe, and we'll know in short time, for sure, one way or the other. What I'm talking about here comes particularly out of Isaiah 14. And I believe that when I started to see what Trump was really doing and started to understand what he's realizing, I believe, of course, that he wouldn't be there unless God put them there ultimately, because God said he raises up powers, he brings them down. He'll use one government or one power to destroy another because his judgment is upon a nation, and he'll use another nation to destroy them, or put two nations against themselves and they destroy each other. Mm-hmm. We read about that in the Bible. And but anyway, if he takes out the head of the beast, which is the deep state and the New World Order, then prophecy is being fulfilled truly. And we're at that point in time where God is speaking, and the people will feed off the meat of Leviathan, in the sense, and that's a parable, of course, in the sense that we will narrowly look upon the man or the men, mankind, the evil. We will narrowly look upon. That means to study. And where do you study an individual but in a court of law? So you're studying the individual. Are they guilty or innocent? Did they do wrong? Are they evil or not? And that's the meat, the food of the people of that day, as God says. And God speaks in parables, and that's why people are confused and don't understand. You have to really go in line upon line, precept upon precept, and let that interpretation take its toll on you. Same thing with the law, though, the Constitution, how it was written and everything, the Bill of Rights, all this brought together. We have to read everything in light of the Bill of Rights. If it affects our rights in any way, shape, or form, then it's null and void, and it's unlawful.
Yes, and we have a lot of that going on right now, like mandatory vaccinations and things of that nature.
Oh, yeah.
This is my body, not yours. Okay.
Okay, well, anyway, just real quickly, let me just finish up on the website. We have so much education out here, founding doc. We got essays and lectures, American history lectures. Thomas Woods, a really great professor of history. We got common law lectures. We got trial by jury essay, which is in written and in audio. And American history lectures are in audio. By a matter of fact, that's in video. What happened to the Constitution essay? We have U.S. Marshal essay, articles and essays, more articles and essays. We have
I saw you had templates there too, or court forms.
What's that?
I see you have
templates
as well.
For
court forms.
Oh, and the court forms, yeah.
Court forms, yeah.
Court
lots
forms,
of stuff.
processes, and instructions. Now, this is one page, and there's very little. When anyone comes to our website, they can see just about everything. But there are a couple of pages, and this is one of them, that you have to be a premier member to see. And being a premier member means you're donating $5 a month or more. And people who can't afford, unfortunately, there are people who really can't even afford the $5, but they're far and in between. But if they tell us, we'll get them in for free, because we want people to get educated. We used to have everything totally for free, but we wasn't getting support financially, so we had to figure a way to do that, and that's how we did that. And also, our courses are free with the exception of government by consent course. You have to be a premier member, which again means that you're giving $5 a month or more. You're giving up a cup of coffee and a bagel once a month. Okay, so I mean, I'm sure everybody should do that anyway.
I just joined.
Hey, don't forget, John, the book has an index to the website.
Right,
I told John I'm going to buy the book just because I forgot where everything is on the website. It's so massive.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
What a tremendous encyclopedia.
Yeah, and it takes you back to the URLs to the pages. See, that's what I have a problem with, because John keeps changing them, and we got people writing things, so the site changes regularly. And if I don't keep up, you think you know everything, but then when you go back to reference something, you forget where it is. And I can spend a lot of time. This website's massive, I'm telling you.
I know. It's amazing how much.
If you only had this thing to educate yourself with for 12 years, you could go through it for 12 years and probably educate yourself every day. You know what I mean?
Yes, I can see that. Impressive amount of work.
Here is the full table of contents, okay? When you get down to where we left off, okay, which is the appendices, after that, we have
there's more
directions. The following free courses and materials, PDF books, audio books, can be found on National Liberty Alliance website. So if you wanted to do the government by consent course, we give you a direct link.
So it refers them back to the website,
course,
which is
the
good.
Militia. We go a theses on the principles of pleadings. You can find all of this under this link right here, books. We give free common law documents that are available at that link. We have all these things here. There's just too much to cover at this point because it's running late. But we have free law dictionaries available. We have Bovier's. We got Black's Law 2nd and 4th edition. I use 4th edition almost exclusively. Once in a while, I use the 2nd to check something out or something. And I use Bovier's sometimes just to get that, to make sure that we're on the same track or see how else a word might be expressed. Free law biographies, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, autobiographies. We got Harmony of the Gospel. This is a study I did back in, I think it was 1980, let me think, 67, it might have been in the 70s. This was a Harmony of the Gospels. And we've got it on audio. And what the teacher, this is my main teacher, he's passed away now, but he had taught from the book of Mark, and he harmonized Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He brought all the scripture together, and he gave this course, and it's on audio, and we have it up here, and it just gives a beautiful harmony of the Gospels. Gets into a lot of spiritual pictures and understandings, and he connects it throughout the whole gospel. The guy really was a great teacher of the Word of God. So anyway, that's available up there, and that's free. All this stuff is free. We got American history lectures, we got articles and essays, with the links to where to find them. Okay, documents available. There are other documents. Hidden agenda video. What a great video this is. Okay, this explains the missing information behind the New World Order and how they use it's called, I think it was referred to as like the missing link. It ties everything together. How the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Warburgs, I think it was, and numerous others, how they use their money and their trusts that they had built in order to subvert this nation and bring communism, Marxism into our government. And the hidden agenda really explains that. And it's only about 49 or 50 minutes long, that particular video, but it really gives a big picture of the connection of what really took place.
And that video is available on that?
Oh, yeah, right on our website there, yeah. At this link here, okay, you'll find all of these videos, okay. Court forms and processes, we were just looking at that. Instructional forms to challenge jurisdiction, again, we were looking at that. Instructional forms to move your case for cause, instructional forms to file a habeas corpus, how to move the court for enforcement, and notice and demand. And I think what I'm going to do in January, February, I may start another book, and I'll call it Court Access. I've got a lot of research already done in that, so I think I could probably put that book together in a month or two, and then get that onto the market for people to really learn how to write a paper in court, what the procedures are, the processes, all the necessary papers, and just put it all together on how to go through the court system, which people really need. I was really disappointed that I could never find that. I had to do my own research, and we did hook into a study that a guy who was a lawyer who taught us a lot of the things on accessing the court and everything. But he's statutory, and I want to get a book to so people don't get confused and get away from the statutory stuff, the civil law stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, we got a lot of stuff.
So this
people
is
need
one
to
of the
get
books.
educated. We need to save this nation.
This is one of the books
agree.
you'd want under your arm if you're running away and you're going to an island or something. This is one of the books you would want.
I'm going to walk away for 20 seconds. My dog's going to kill me if I don't let her out the door. But continue.
Or there will be an accident.
I had to walk away. My daughter had a snake in her bedroom. My goodness.
Oh my
gracious.
God.
It was a ribbon snake. I'd never seen one. And it had two yellow lines, and it was pretty big.
Are they poisonous?
Of course, they got the door and the window open. It's summertime, and I guess it came in. I don't know.
Wow.
Of course, now she doesn't want it. She won't want to go to bed down there. It's a cellar
That's creepy.
bedroom.
Oh, no wonder I blame her. Oh, I think mothballs but they are bad to breathe at.
Oh yeah, right. Who's it going to? I'd rather sleep with the snake than the mothballs.
Yeah,
What are the
they'll make
mothballs
you
for?
sick.
Well,
Keep
she got a
snakes away.
snake in her bedroom. That's why I left before.
Put it outside by the windows.
Yeah, well, we're going to close the window, I hope, tonight.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. So
What kind of snake?
It was a ribbon snake, and it was pretty big. It was like, an
Are they
inch
poisonous?
wide. No.
Was it an adult? Did it have babies in the wall or something?
I don't know. I think there is babies in the wall because she said she saw a snake out by the steps a couple days ago. This thing was
Is this over
about
your house?
2.5 feet long. It was pretty long.
Is this in your house?
Yeah, my daughter's room. I had to leave.
Oh,
I said,
wow.
I'll be back because there was all kinds of baloney going on with this snake. I had to catch it and throw it outside. It wasn't poisonous. I made sure he's.
Well, you need to take it away because it's going to come back, especially if there's a nest in the house.
No, they left it. They left the window open and the door open.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway, let's get back to what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Where do we want to go?
Never a dull moment. Well, we're almost out of time, aren't we? It's like we got.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
the key thing,
we've
the
done
key
3
message-
hours.
Look, at the key message we need to get out there is the book and our website, obviously, too, and for people to get connected. And the very least, look, at everybody who's hearing this information now has a duty to respond to save this nation, to save our republic. Because again,
Yes.
Trump can only bring us to a position to start us up again, but the people got to take the authority, and we have to have government by consent. We have to control the political power, and we have to control the judicial power, and we have to also control, as being the militia. We have to become the militia to control government from becoming a fire that can burn us. So we have to do these things, and now we have a duty. Now that you've heard, you have a duty, and the very least you can do is to buy the book and send it to your sheriff. And at the same time, you should buy a book to educate yourself and your children. And at the same time, by buying that book and doing those things is an important thing and part of what we're doing. We need to hit critical mass. This is extremely important that we hit critical mass.
Yes.
And I believe that if we can sell 6,000 books, which would be 3,000 to the sheriff and 3,000 to people, I was doing a little research on how to get to the bestsellers list, and generally there is a kind of an idea out there that if you sell between 5 or 6 over 5,000 books, and you get that sale done, then that's when the chain stores take you serious. And if you do it before you even publish it, and you're selling those books at publishing time by pre-sales, okay, that's even more powerful. And if we can get into, Barnes and Nobles and all of the major book chains and the libraries, if we can get these books out there, that will bring us to critical mass. Okay, so our goal is to sell at least 5,000 pre-orders of our book, which is planned to be released hopefully in November, but it should be out in December, the worst case. But I am pressing my publisher to push this out before, if possible before the elections, but around the election time. The one other thing that we're doing, and we're looking for help, we have a sort of a thermometer on the right-hand side of our website, and it's to donate to help publish the book, Government by Consent. And if you click on that, basically it tells about what we're doing with the book and who we plan to send books to a lot of people. President Trump, Pence, Attorney General Barr, the Supreme Court, all justices, General Flynn, Devin Nunes, Jordan, McCarthy, a lot of different senators and congressmen, but particularly a lot of senators, and a few individuals in the media that we would hope would maybe interview us and help push this educational thing out to the public.
And also, you're planning on making this make a curriculum book also for the schools. We have hopes that this can be taught in the schools.
That would be awesome.
This is the instruction manual on a nation, on how to bring the nation back to liberty, blessings of liberty. And it's the only instruction manual I know.
Yeah, I was talking with Brent Winters, and again, there's someone you should really interview, is Brent Winters. He's a really, really intelligent guy. I mean, he's got the common law down pat. He wrote a book, Excellence of the Common Law. I learned a lot about common law and the history of common law by his book. I quote his book quite often in my book. and him and I are going to collaborate to do textbooks for the schools to
Was
get
it
a
Brett?
proper education. Brent Winters.
Oh, okay.
He's commonlawyer.com is his website.
.com. You can find
Oh.
his URL on our website. I know he's in there on the side somewhere.
Okay.
But
yeah,
anyway,
I would,
we can get this book, right now we're trying to collect also money to pay because it's costing $10,500, which I had to go into debt to get this thing started. So I'm hoping on people to help, donate towards that. And,
I will get whatever people I have to get this around as much as possible. I know
I'm thinking that if right now I've already put down 5,000. I got to come up with another 5,500 before they, after the editing is done, I have to come up with another 5,500. I'm thinking if I can collect all of that quick enough, I can offer them with some kind of a leverage to say, hey, look, I'm going to pay the whole thing off right now. Let's make sure this thing gets published by November. That might be a leverage I can use.
I'll tell you, the sad thing is 10,500 in the grand scheme of this country is nothing.
nothing.
Right.
It's
There
nothing.
are people
But
that could top that out with
I'm
nothing.
telling you, I keep wondering where the heck are the patriots that have money to put.
Exactly. Where
I mean, if
are
you want
they?
to put your money someplace, come
Well,
on, tell me a better investment.
we did have someone a couple of days
Exactly.
ago donate $1,500, and that's why the goal over there is the bricks. You'll see $1,500 has been collected. But yeah, we've had people that have given 1,000 or 5,000 here or there, but it doesn't come in often, and that
I just
really
know
helps.
there's somebody out there that could make a donation that big.
Yeah,
something
without
like
a
this.
problem. I think we should ask George
Exactly.
Soros. What do you think?
Oh yeah, Georgie.
I mean,
But-
we'll apply.
George
We'll call
Soros.
it. We'll say, look, we're very progressive. He'll go for it. I'm telling you.
But just real quick, let me just cover one other thing, and that's these forms. If you go here, donate to Save Our Republic, campaign for constitutional sheriffs, the order form is found right here and on the bottom. If you click on the order form, it basically lays out the information, $50 per book. But we're looking for, the name of the information of the person that's filling this out. And
We have
the
a pretty good
county-
sheriff here.
Huh?
I said we have a pretty good sheriff where I'm at in Yavapai County because they're very protective of the Second Amendment. So I really appreciate them for that.
Yeah, but there's a lot that he probably doesn't understand beyond that. A
Yeah,
lot of sheriffs understand this. I think
I
almost all
agree.
the sheriffs understand this.
Hey, we had a
But-
sheriff that applied for a membership in the chief of police organizations. And I'm not going to say who or where, but he got a letter back, and he's known as a constitutional sheriff because he's very out there. And they said, we're returning your application, your check. We took a vote, and although we appreciate that you're a constitutional sheriff, quote unquote, at this time the membership feels it's too controversial.
Oh my God! Oh
Yeah.
my God!
Right,
Even
that's
the
how bad it
sheriff's
There's a
out of-
statement.
Oh my
That's how
word.
bad it is,
I don't
yeah.
believe it. Yeah, wow.
All right, well, anyway, here's the order form, pre-orders through the mail, checks or money orders. We're not doing credit cards or anything because, we have to set up another system. And when we set the system up, there's two payments to go through. There's first of all, there's the software needed to go through that process and to update the credit cards and all that. Every time it's used, they cost us money for that. And then also there's the gateway into the banks that cost us money. So we lose a lot of money, going through credit cards to begin with. And
Yes.
and we're not making, we'll even giving up some of our profit in order to get the book out for, for $50. $1.05 is not enough to cover shipping and handling and tax. But in any event, we have, this particular order form came off of from clicking on that one page. Where was that? Want that?
Doesn't matter really.
Okay, I don't know what happened to that page. Oh, got to go back. I got to go fix that. That shouldn't have happened that way. That should have hopped on a new page. But anyway, here's the order form joining for the sheriffs. And when you click on that, you then print out the form and then mail it to us. But we do need the sheriff, the county that you're in. We don't need the sheriff's name because if the book goes out and there's a new sheriff coming in, we don't want to be addressed to the sheriff that may be going out. So we're just going
okay.
to sheriff of whatever
makes
county
sense.
you're in.
Yeah.
And now we do have all of the addresses of all the sheriffs in the nation already. We have that on an Excel spreadsheet. We've already done that work. But we want people to give it to us, and then we'll check that against the address we have, and that'll confirm that it's a correct address, so we don't send the book to the wrong place, because we'll be sending it out through the mail as a book, which may take a week to get to a person. But if it doesn't reach its destination and there's no one to give it to, they throw it away. They don't send it back. So we don't want that to happen. But anyway, it's $50 a piece, and with this order form, you can order additional books, one for yourself or more than one for yourself, and then tally it up and send it in, and then we will send it out. As soon as the publisher gets it out, we'll be sending them out. They'll go out right away. So again, our goal is to sell at least 5,000 or more to 6,000 books. That'll put us onto the bestsellers list, generally speaking, get us through the major bookstores, the outlets, and we believe it'll give us the critical mass that we need, because the book refers to the movement, what we're doing here in National Liberty Alliance, and it'll educate the people, and we'll have the right people to fill all the right positions and move things along quickly to take back the political and judicial processes. So,
Awesome. That's awesome. I put something on my Facebook page around my picture that says, when tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes duty. And
that's close to a Jefferson quote.
Well,
it is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of that.
Sounds something like George Orwell said in 1984. There was a quote like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it came from, but I saw it and I put it on.
It's a good quote. I like it. Wherever it came from.
Yeah, I just saw it and I said, "Ooh, I got to put this on my thing because it's so relevant right now." And just as this whole talk has been relevant, and your book is extremely relevant, and will definitely be a big advocate of it.
We appreciate that. And again, I think a lot of this this idea also comes out of the Declaration of Independence. It is the duty of the people to redress the problem with a government. I'm trying to find that. Yeah, that whensoever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Okay? So what are they talking about is when men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, and when that falls apart and it becomes destructive to that end, we have to do something about it, and we are doing something about it. We are nailing papers to the door of the United States Supreme Court. We are exposing the sins of the judiciary, particularly the United States Supreme Court, but the entire federal judiciary, and we're telling them what they need to do, and they only have a little more time left to do it, because if not, we're going to indict the United States Supreme Court. We have to really consider those indictments. And we have to remove from government all of these people that are destructive to our Bill of Rights. That alone, okay? Destructive to our Bill of Rights, bringing forth Marxism. We need to remove these people from office, and we need to do it now. And I do believe we're going to get some assistance from Barr, the Attorney General Barr.
I hope so.
And the President of the United States. They have to. I listened to what they're saying very carefully. Barr has talked quite a bit in different places where he's given speeches, and I am very, very impressed by his speeches and his understanding of the Constitution and his position in law. And he's getting our papers, and I cannot believe that he doesn't understand what we're talking about. And I can't believe that he would disagree with us. He may not have been aware on how much liberty we really should be having, and because we are bringing it to the bare bone. We're bringing it right to where it belongs, and I do believe they see it.
Yeah, the bar attorneys have been brainwashed in many ways, and I think Trump has done a wonderful job of exposing these people by just letting them do their thing and showing what they do.
Are you familiar with X-22?
Oh.
X-22 report?
Oh, report. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, me too.
X-22,
Because
I
that
know
guy
it.
really lays
Yeah.
out a lot of the inside information,
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, he does a good
And
job.
BCP, Black Conservative Patriot, a guy named BCP, he
I've
lays
seen
it out from a different position, though. But both of those guys, between those two, that's where I get a lot of my news.
Yeah, they're good. They are good.
But there are other places, but those are my majors. Yeah.
Alrighty then. Is there anything either one of you would like to say to sum this up, and we can call this a wrap, and we can even do
Help save the Republic. Only the people can do it. Go to nationallibertyalliance.org. Get involved in a campaign for constitutional sheriffs. Get yourself educated. Step up and do your duty.
Yeah,
And,
get your book, put it under your arm, and go to Washington. What
There
was
you
that?
go.
Mr. Smith goes to Washington. There you go. We got the book for you to go to Washington and do all the right stuff needs to be done.
One other tab I'd like to bring to your attention before we go also is the People's Duty. I just highlighted it right there.
Oh, yes. good.
And these are the things that everybody needs to be focusing in on doing it. Campaign for constitutional sheriffs to begin with. Organizing your county. We give a detail. We want to try to get everyone structured in a uniform way. They have the liberty and freedom to do what they need to do in their counties on the grassroots level. They got to figure those things out. But we should be all uniform in a certain way. So when you go from one state to another, we communicate. We're all communicating apples and not apples and oranges. Organizing your county. So make sure everybody's registered to vote. Believe it or not, there's people amongst us that haven't registered to vote. They need to register.
Well, I have to say I haven't registered to vote, but I intend to vote this time because I'm voting
Well, you better
for
get
Trump.
out to register because there's a deadline on that registering. You need to do it now.
There is a deadline.
And you can register right here online, right
Well, I
here.
see.
You'll fill the paper out, send it in. You become registered. You get response in the mail. How to
Okay.
become a committeeman, the committeeman a petition process, the party rules that we put together, Republic Review, are very powerful. We've come together with another liberty-minded group that is working on what's called the Public Review. We support their efforts. We're working together. And it's a very important, this is something the committeeman could work on, the Republic Review. The militia registration, registering as a militia in your county, militia members in your county, the rules of the several states of the militia, becoming a jury administrator, and then we have a page devoted directly to the county sheriff, which gives them the power of the county sheriff. So we have a lot of stuff. People have a lot of educating to do, and we need to do it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. You have done a tremendous amount of work. And there's just about anything anybody could possibly ask for there someplace. So my hat's off to you. You've done an awesome job. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Let's save the nation. We got to save this republic.
Yes, we
have to
do.
understand it to save it.
You're absolutely correct. And thank you so much again. And
Thanks for having us.
Yep. God bless you.
happy. I may think about having you again. But anyway, for now.
Anytime. Anytime you want to talk, we'll talk.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Godspeed.
Okay, bye-bye.